How on? Dan McCalla here. Welcome back if you were here for the Porsches earlier. What great races they were. This is the opening round of the 2023-24 Simply Race Touring Car Championship around the National Circuit at Donington Park. The 15-minute qualifying session has just got underway. I have Grant Lyman alongside me as usual. We have a 15-minute qualifying session and 3 18-lap races to come this afternoon. So thank you very, very much for joining us. We've got much more variety of cars on the grid this year. We've got Fords, we've got BMWs, we've got Toyotas, Cupras, we've got more of the hybrid system use as well, and different tyre rules from round to round. We've got 12 cars out there for this weekend at least, and we will have a new champion, or rather the crown will move for this season with our defending champion, Callum Cripps. Thank you for joining us on the feed today, Callum, but not able to join us for the full season this season. You are looking at the man who on paper would probably be the favourite for this year's championship, the number 2 LM racing car of Lewis Manley, who switched from Toyota to Ford, and he certainly made a statement in the free practice session this morning, setting a 1 minute 9.5. It was the fastest lap of the session, set quite early on in that session, fastest from the Napa Racing UK focus of John Dean Smith by just 2 thousandths of a second. It's also worth pointing out that we have a lot of new drivers and new names as well on that list, as you can see as well. There was just 1.4 seconds between the entire field of 12 cars in that 30-minute practice session that we've just had. So it's a very competitive field, very close racing, and if I can bring you in now, Grant, I think we might see very similar as we saw with the Porsches earlier, in that with it being so competitive, any errors I think are going to be sort of cause a big penalty in terms of the race.
Yeah, errors are going to be absolutely key. Consistency, keeping it on the grey stuff. So just to go through some of the points as we're rounding up Lewis's first hot lap. It looks like it's going to go fastest quite comfortably. Chris Wilson does a 1 minute 10.3 to originally go pole. Manley does a 109.8 to snatch that from him. But just wanted to mention, so this year for this race it is a medium tyre only round, so no option tyre for this race. Most of the other races in the season will have an option tyre, but we're not going to bore you with all of those details right now, as we've got a very exciting qualifying session in progress as Lewis goes purple again in sector 1 from the looks of it.
We have indeed, Grant, and then once again, as you see in the Real World Touring Car Championship, that we're going to have different hybrid allocations for different drivers depending on success, and of course we will have the reverse grid race in race 3. But let's have a look at this lap for Lewis Manley at the moment, because he's put in a very strong first sector again, just a few thousandths above. He just lost it in the second sector there. 109.54, I think it's 109.544. That was Manley's time in free practice. Let's have a look at Aidan Carter though, because he's done a purple sector 2. He has said he's been struggling for tyre temperature in the BMW, particularly with the inside tyres on the right hand side of the car. And so maybe not showing the pace he showed in the Porsches earlier when he picked up a win and a third. What can he do here in early stages of this practice session? The answer is a 1:10.1. Meanwhile, Chris Wilson has gone to the top of the times on a 1:09.8. Good effort by Chris Wilson. There were 5 drivers, in fact your current top 5, Wilson, Manley, Buchan, Carter and Dean Smith. Those were the 5 who managed to get into the 1:09s in practice, and John Dean Smith 1:09.580, just a few hundreds short of his practice time, and that's the kind of times we're expecting to see in qualifying. The Napa Racing UK car number 94, John Dean Smith, unfortunately span out of the lead in race 2 of the Porsches early on, hoping to make amends and put that Napa car right up at the front of the field. 1:09.580, great time on John Dean Smith, but Lewis Manley's on a hot one, another purple sector 1. Keeping on Chris Wilson as well, because time's going very quickly. Manley purple sector 2 I think as well, though Aidan Carter has gone even quicker, so I think we're going to see a lot of times coming in now in the mid 1:09s. 1:09.544 was Manley's fastest time from free practice. They're coming up to the line now. Pretty much most of the leaders are coming up to the line now. Remember, it's a private qualifying session, they don't have any traffic. Wilson's come into the pits, and everyone else coming up towards the start-finish line. The third sector is the longest on the track. 1:09.536 by Lewis Manley. 8 thousandths quicker than he went in free practice early on, and Aidan Carter's managed to do a 1:09.9 that puts him in 4th place ahead of Martin Buchan. And there, John Dean Smith, 1:09.515.
He made most of that in the middle sector on that lap, a 10th quicker than Lewis there. It wasn't a great final sector for John though, which made the time a lot closer than it would have been. So there's definitely a lot more time to come from John Dean Smith.
Yeah, we're talking with John Dean Smith now. He's gone through the first sector, found a few more hundreds, but it's this point here where he seems to be at the strongest through the old hairpin at the Schwantz curves and then McLean's. The sector 2 line is between McLean and Coppice. Meanwhile, we go on board with Lewis Manley, who's a 10th up at sector 1. He's 3,000ths up in sector 2, but we know that is where John Dean Smith was strongest, and he maybe had a slightly weaker sector 3, so maybe a chance for Lewis Manley to retake provisional pole position with 9 minutes of this session remaining.
Yeah.
John's done a purple sector 2, so both of them going even quicker. Manley's going to get to the line first out of the two of them. Here he comes now. And can he lower the bar any further? Yes, he can. 109.2. 109.287. Manley's found a quarter of a second. Can John Dean Smith tidy up that sector 3 and get back on terms? He comes up to the line now, not quite. 109.37. But I have to say, we saw obviously John did a few touring car rounds in the BMW towards the end of last year. This is his first race in preferred focus, and he really, I mean, if you're getting onto Lewis Manley's pace, it really does show that he is coming on leaps and bounds in the touring car. Aidan Carter's up to third now on a 109.7, and Chris Wilson remains fourth. Martin Buchan is now also into the 109s, 109.907, and then it's Charlie Keir, one of our new drivers. He's best of the newcomers at the moment in sixth place, then Ben Bennyworth, and then further down, 5 new names for us: Ben Smith, Gareth Ball, Josh Vincent, Dale Crisp and Stuart Pringle. We're looking at Aidan Carter because he's done a purple second sector. He is right in the mix as he comes down to the chicane. So hard to pick out your braking point because it's just over the rise there in the crest, and it's hard to keep the car under control with the weight just lifting off the ground. Here he comes through the last corner. 109.287 the time to beat from Lewis Manley, and Carter comes across the line. Can he go up to the top? No, he can't. He's just lost it in that last sector. He's improved his time, 109.5.8, and Martin Buchan's done a 109.5 now as well to move up into fourth. So this session really hotting up now. Ben Bennyworth done a 110 dead, 110.009. He goes up to P6. So no surprise really at the moment that it's the 6 drivers who have the previous experience of this championship that are filling up the top 6 places.
Yeah, very close. One thing I noticed with Aidan, and the same in the Porsches as well, he seems to always get his best lap on his second attempt. Like, he will do 2 hot laps on the tyres. Almost like the first one is a prep lap, but it's a very fast prep lap. But I noticed that in the Porsches as well. I know the BMW, obviously, it does struggle to get the tyre temps a little bit, as a purple final sector there for Chris Wilson on that latest run. Really nice final sector, 109.6. Good time for him.
Less than a third of a second now between the top 5. I think a couple of very competitive races in prospect.
Definitely so, and with those BMWs obviously being better in terms of a race stint because of the fuel, the tyre usage, I think it's going to be very interesting to see Aidan versus the cars that will potentially be in front of him, because let's not rule him out for pole position.
No, not at all. For those of you who weren't here early, Aidan Carter picked up a first and a third in the 2 Porsche races, dominated the first race, won it by more than 12 seconds, and he does lead that championship going to the next round at Brands Hatch along with the touring cars in the middle of October. We go back to Lewis Manley, as he's just warming up the tyres. He's come back out for his second run out of the pits, as has John Dean Smith. Martin Buchan's just in for a tyre change now. Let's very quickly take stock then as we go into the second half of the session. Lewis Manley on pole on 109.2, John Dean Smith on a 109.3, Carter and Buchan 109.5, Wilson 109.6, Ben Bennyworth on a 110.0. So, less than 6 minutes to go. And Chris Wilson's just put an extra bit of time, 109.570, so an extra few hundredths shaved off there by Chris Wilson, but not managing to move up from his 4th place. So let's keep a look on Lewis Manley, really pushing the track limits to their limit as he comes out of Redgate and down through Hollywood and the Craner curves, the right, then the left, and then before the old hairpin. But look at the first sector time, he is down, but only by 68 thousandths of a second, so still potentially plenty of time to come. Aidan Carter went to the pits for a quick change. He'll come back out for a couple more laps. These are 2 Schwantz curves. Then up to the right hander of McLean's, and then he'll come to the sector 2 line before the next corner of Coppice. Here he comes now. Where is Manley going to be? He's up, 600ths up. This could be a further improvement. It might just be the extra little bit he needs just to push that bar a little bit higher beyond John Dean Smith and Aidan Carter's grasp. So down Starkey Straight, under where the Dunlop Bridge used to be before it was removed, and into the Goddard chicane. We'll go right, really pushing it, and left, really pushing very hard. He must have lost time. He's gone well off onto the grass there, but I don't think he's going to improve, and it may well compromise his next lap as well. Still did a 109.8, has to be said. But yeah, you can see how hard he's pushing. Here's John Dean Smith. He's only a 10.42 down at sector 2. I don't think he's going to find the improvement he needs on this lap, but still plenty of time to go to over 4 minutes. It's a 109.6. It's a perfectly respectable lap time, but it's not enough at this point to get in that pole position. Carter now on his out lap. Chris Wilson's coming to the pits. That's going to be a very quick change if he's going to get out. And Carter has spun. That is not what he needs. That's really going to compromise those tyres. And given the tyre temp, I'm not sure he's got the time to get back in and get back out again. Meanwhile, red first sector for John Dean Smith by 4 thousandths of a second. That's exactly what he wanted. We know he's strong here in sector 2 through the Schwantz curves and McLean's. Sector 3 and the chicane principle is where they need to sharpen up. Doesn't quite take the apex as aggressively as Manley. Will it be reflected in the sector time? It is. He's 2/10 down. John Dean Smith, as for those of you may not be aware, is the Dan Rowbottom's tyre technician in the Real World Touring Car Championship, hence his running with the official blessing of Napa in the Napa Racing UK colours. It comes down to the chicane for the final time, so 3 minutes 13 left. He's got time for 3 more laps if he wants them, if he still feels he's got the tyre. As he comes across the line now, great last sector. Really, really good last sector. He's actually managed to shave 10 thousandths off his time. 109.361. He's got the gap down from 84 thousandths to 74. Meanwhile, Lewis Manley's done a purple first sector. Manley is on a fly. We go on board with him now through the first of the Schwantz curves. Up by 4 hundredths. Up to 6, down to normally third gear to come through McLean's out of the corner. John Dean Smith's gone even quicker than Manley on this lap through the first sector as well, so we'll keep an eye on him. Manley still up slightly at sector 2. He I think just lost a few thousandths there, but he's still in a good position to make an improvement. Aidan Carter's well off the pace at sector 1. I've got a feeling. I don't think he's going to be able to improve any further, which may leave involved with Wilson and Buchan in 4th and 5th. They're only a few hundredths behind. Into the last chicane. Bit of a slide from Manley going through the right-hander. Has it just compromised him and going to cost him those few hundredths that he needs? Come up to the line now. Is there improvement? No, it did cost him. We go to John Dean Smith straight away. Thank you, Grant. He's just down a 10th or 2 at sector 2 as he made it up in the 3rd sector. Can he beat 109.287? The answer is no. I think he's lost a lot of time actually in sector 3 there. I'll guess it probably was at Copy because the chicane didn't look that bad to me. John Dean Smith still having to settle for second for now. 1 minute 45 on the clock, so still time to make an improvement. Less than 0.3 of a second between the top 5. I think we've got a couple, well, 3 fantastic races in prospect coming up this afternoon. Only 1.5 between the field. Let's not do down the sorry, Grant, you interrupt me.
Just wanted to point out Martin Buchan has dethroned Chris Wilson and moved up to P4 on that last lap. He's the best time.
Yep, and he's 13 thousandths short of Aidan Carter. Aidan Carter's in the pits. His session is done, so Buchan might be able to get himself up into 3rd place. I was just about to say, if we see John Dean Smith doing a personal best sector 2, the guys at the back 1.5 seconds off the pace. Given the level of the drivers at the front, that is no mean feat, given that a lot of drivers there are new to the championship as well. So a really high level throughout the field here at Donington Park today. Dean Smith in 2. The final chicane again. He'll get 1 more lap after this. Has he still got the grip in the tyres to find that 1/10 of a second that he needs? Comes to the line. Purple 3rd sector. Shaves a few more hundredths off, but he needs to shave another 57 of them off if he's to get onto pole position. We go to Manley on his final flying lap. He's a few seconds ahead of John Dean Smith on the road, and he's done a purple 1st sector. Oh, just had to really pushing the track limits there. That's where those hundredths of a second lie, just trying to get it absolutely right without causing a track limits violation. Into McLean's.
So John not improving on his final run in sector 1, so this could be the lap for Manley.
Good spot, Grant, thank you very much. It looks like Lewis Manley may be safe. He will take the checkered flag at the end of this lap. Martin Buchan's on a good time. He may be able to improve and pinch that 3rd place as well. We'll keep an eye out for that. Checkered flag is out. Will Manley just be able to make a statement and get himself a little bit more breathing space? It's certainly be a statement in 10-10 of the races. He comes up the line now. It certainly looks like it will be pole position for Lewis Manley. He takes a straight line, run to the line, and he does it with a 109.1. He did find an extra 10 in the last sector, and Buchan gets 3rd. 109.400 on the last lap, and he does take that 3rd place away. Aidan Carter, as we thought he might. And we're just going to have a look now to see if there's anyone else. I don't think there's anyone else who's still on a particularly quick lap. And I think that might be that. So, Lewis Manley, pretty much, I would say as expected, on pole position for race 1 for Simply Race Touring Car season opener at Donington Park, but he's not going to have things all his own way. John Dean Smith, Martin Buchan, Aidan Carter, Chris Wilson, all experienced drivers and all within just over 0.4 of a second of him. Gareth Boyle, the best of the newcomers, a good lap in 6th place, get ahead of Ben Bennyworth, who finished 4th in this championship last year. Then it's Charlie Keir, Ben Crisp, Stuart Pringle, Dale Crisp and Josh Vincent, rounding out a very high class. 12-car grid for the first of 3 18-lap races, Grant.
Yeah, I want to say a good job by Gareth Boyle to jump into P6. Like, fantastic final lap to get into the 109.8.
Yeah,
really impressive.
Yeah, very, very good lap. And I think anyone, if you're a newcomer, is getting within 7/10 of Lewis Manley first time out, then you are doing a very, very good job indeed. So Lewis Manley on the pre-season favourite in, certainly in my eyes, on pole position for race 1, which is coming up very, very shortly, but with plenty of competition at the front of the field, a great racing prospect. Stay tuned, we'll be back with you shortly.
Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now? Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now? Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now?
Welcome back, everybody. It is time to go racing. Race 1 of 21 of the 2023-24 Simply Race Touring Car Championship at Donington Park. Lewis Manley on pole position with John Dean Smith joining him on the front row. Martin Buck had just pinched third position from Aidan Carter on the last lap of qualifying. Chris Wilson in fifth, only 4/10 of pole position. And Gareth Boyle, the best of the newcomers, in sixth place. Then it's Ben Bennyworth, who was fourth in this championship last year. Then a host of newcomers towards the back of the field, all doing pretty well to be not too far away from the ultimate pace. Charlie Keir, Ben Crisp, Stuart Pringle, Dale Crisp and Josh Vincent rounding out a grid of 12 for this first of 3 18-lap races this afternoon at a grey and overcast Donington Park. Lewis Manley leading John Dean Smith and Martin Buchan away from the grid on this formation lap. And there really wasn't that much in it in qualifying, Grant. Just bring in Grant Lyman, who's alongside me in the commentary box. And so it's not necessarily a fait accompli for Lewis. He's going to have it all his own way.
No, definitely not. I mean, it was very, very close between him and John Dean Smith, but also we need to keep an eye on Aidan Carter in that BMW. The rear wheels of that BMW are going to make it a very strong car at the end of this race. When the front-wheel drive cars are starting to struggle with their tyre wear, Aidan is going to be extremely strong with his race pace. So
in the context of, suppose, struggles maybe in the last couple of years that Lewis has had with tyre wear, that is, suppose, particularly something to watch out for. I think, although I will say one thing over the course of last year, he did seem to do a bit better with it than perhaps he has in the past.
Yeah, I think he's worked a lot on it. During the practice session today, he, instead of doing hot laps like he normally does, he did a race sim.
Did a full race sim,
didn't he? Race sim. So I think he's got a good understanding of where his full race pace is at, which is really useful for him. Very different frame of mind for Lewis this season. I really think he just wants to get back into his championship winning ways. I do want to point something out just quickly. Martin Buchan is not in a Porsche. I'd like to apologise for the random Porsche that appeared on the starting grid on the icons for anyone that may have noticed that. He is in a Toyota, as you can see. I think it's got a little bit confused because he was driving a Porsche earlier.
Just a very quick word on the hybrid allocations for this race. As is normal, so the hybrid works for up to 15 seconds over each lap you can use it. How many laps you get depends on where you are. So Lewis Manley on pole position will only get to use the hybrid on one lap in this race. John Dean Smith 2, Martin Buchan 3, Aidan Carter 4, Chris Wilson 5, Gareth Boyle 6, Ben Bennyworth 7th, and then everyone from Charlie Kieran 8th backwards will get the maximum of 8 laps of hybrid in this race. As the drivers come back round to the grid. Manley has switched from Toyota to Ford for this year, another Ford, the Napa Ford of John Dean Smith alongside him on the front row, and then it's the Toyota of Buchan and the BMW of Carter on row 2, and then 5th place Chris Wilson in the Vauxhall Astra. So, Josh Vincent lines up at the back of the grid. It's time to go racing. The opening round of the Simply Race Touring Car Championship for 2023-24 is about to begin. Lewis Manley and John Dean Smith on the front row. The race starts. Bit of a long hold. Now. Good start from Manley. John Dean Smith got a slot into second place. I don't think Aidan Carter's get much of a rear-wheel drive advantage to the BMW. In fact, he's probably quite vulnerable to move from Chris Wilson to come into Redgate. Big sweeping line from John Dean around the outside. He's left the gap wide open there for Martin Buchan to come through. I think John Dean went 2-1. He's gone way out onto the green as they come through Redgate down to Oliver the first time. He's going to drop behind Wilson and probably behind Carter as well. So good start for Manley. Then it's Buchan in second place. Then Wilson. Then Carter, John Dean Smith back to 5th, then Bennyworth in 6th, and a great start by Stuart Pringle, who has moved it up into 7th place in that black and orange car with the teeth that you see there. So John Dean Smith, unfortunately, way too wide into the first corner, didn't quite have the grip in the Napa Racing Focus, and he, unfortunately, is the big loser on lap 1. But Lewis Manley will be very pleased to get a bit of daylight out front. Up the hill, through Coppice.
Great start from Chris Wilson as well, up to 3rd place. Really good, strong start. And keeping in touch for now with Martin Buchan, but Martin's stretching that out a little bit as John is looking to make a move on Aidan. Yeah,
Aidan Carter has reported he's really struggling with grip on the front tyres, so early in the race, maybe a little bit vulnerable, didn't get a great start despite being rear-wheel drive. Managed to hold them off through the chicane. So a relatively clean first lap to start the season. Manley leads, but Buchan has got Chris Wilson all over him. Great job by Wilson early on, and Wilson looks like he's going to go for it from a long way back, but can't quite get the move done. I think unfortunately we lost Josh Vincent. I think has had a bit of a spin at the back of the field, and he's dropped off the back of the pack. But it's Manley by 1.1 seconds from Buchan, Wilson, Carter, Dean Smith, Bennyworth, Pringle, Boyle, Keir, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp, and then Josh Vincent a little bit off the back in 12th place, bringing up the rear. Chris Wilson there, really pushing hard on the grass and sold. Stuart Pringle, I think, has just gone off coming out the back of the old hairpin because he was well onto the grass. Was it? It might have been one of the other drivers, in fact. I'm trying to see where Gareth Boyle is, but there has been a couple of offs further down the field. It was Gareth. Oh, yeah, I can see him towards the back there. Apologies. So around come the leaders on lap 2. Lewis Manley already 1.5 seconds to the good here, which I'll no doubt be extremely pleased about. Chris Wilson does seem to have good pace. He's been consistent all the way through practice and qualifying so far, but if he's going to have a chance of winning, really, he needs to get past Martin Buchan in very short order. Buchan, of course, already has his Porsche experience today. Came back to 4th in race 1 after going off on the first lap and then won the reverse grid race 2. As they come into Redgate once again, Manley a 1:10.0, Buchan 1:10.4, so Yeah, Buchan dropping nearly half a second to Manley on that lap, and that just demonstrates the pace that Manley's got, how Chris Wilson needs to try and clear him. He also allowed in Carter and John Dean Smith back into play on lap 3 out of 18, Grant.
Yeah, we saw this a lot last year from Lewis, though. Whenever he got pole position, he would pull away quite a bit at the start of the race, but it would always come back through the race if he overdrove the car and overdid his tyres. His lap times are 2 tenths quicker, nearly 3 tenths quicker than the next fastest car, which is Aidan Carter in 4th place. So it's going to be really interesting to see if he can keep that pace throughout the race. Remember, he's only got 1 lap to use the hybrid as well, compared to Wilson, who's got quite a few more laps than him.
I'm just looking at the sector times now. Manley's taken out another 3 or 4 tenths just in the first 2 sectors of this lap as they come through. Goddard's for the 3rd time. Manley, I think this might be in the 109s here from Lewis Manley. As he comes across on any second now. It's a 109.5, a very strong time indeed, and he's brought his lead out to 2 seconds. Almost 2 seconds, I should say. Then this big trade, you've only got, 4 seconds here between Martin Buchan in 2nd and Charlie Keir in 8th. Charlie Keir, in fact, who's a newcomer to this championship, number 99, is just on the fastest 3rd sector. He's in that pink car you just saw in the background at the back of this bunch. There he is in the background there. Good effort by him. And the race kind of settling down now into its natural rhythm. And I think, Grant, I said you've watched many of these races from over the years more than I have. You get the feeling this may well turn into be a race that's principally about tyre management.
Definitely. I think these early phases of the race are absolutely key, although we are seeing Chris is starting to look at the back of Martin once more, but you don't want to overdrive the car, especially at this phase of the race. I feel like John is going to try and plan on maybe saving his tyres behind Aidan and hope to potentially follow him through. Once
Oh,
he's
not like that. He's not,
no,
not
no,
like that. He's not completely overbraked himself. Very nearly took Aidan Carter out there. Made a complete mess of it. Ben Bennyworth's going to come through there. Real shame for John, who's had a bit of an up and down day today. He's been very fast in place, both in the Porsches and in these cars, but also made a couple of mistakes. I think Stuart Pringle's going to sense an opportunity as well. John's just about left him enough room. This is now for 6th place. Pringle doesn't quite get the drive to be able to get on the inside come through Hollywood, so John Dean Smith just dropping back by 1 place, puts him back to 6th. Meanwhile, at the front, Lewis Manley's lead is up to 2.2 seconds.
Yeah, and interestingly, Martin Buchan starting to get a lot closer to Lewis Manley's first sector times as well. Only a few hundredths off of him that time. Still a little bit slower, but it's good to see that he does have that pace to match Lewis. Be interesting to see if he can close that gap.
Could be the old parable of the tortoise and the hare today, if people are able to use their tyres better and make up ground in the later stages. So they're only on lap 5 out of 18. Still a long way to go.
We've got Aidan Carter chasing down Chris Wilson as well, 2 tenths quicker than him in sector 1 alone.
Absolutely. So they come to the line in of lap 5. That's a good chance to compare the lap times of the leaders as they all come through now. Manley, fastest lap of the race, 109.4. Buchan, 109.5. That's better. Wilson, 110.2. Carter, 110.1. And Bennyworth, 109.6. Really good lap by Ben Bennyworth. John Dean Smith lost the lap for track limits. That might be because of going off at Goddard to the previous lap, but he did do a fastest middle sector.
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely not out of kilter for John to make a comeback in this race, because he is still right on the back of Ben Bennyworth. He's 3 tenths behind, who himself is only 9 tenths behind Aidan Carter. So costly mistake, yes, in terms of positions, but in terms of actual lap time, he's not lost a ridiculous amount.
No, and he's caught up to the back of Ben Bennyworth very quickly. I mean, it's very strange for, we will see John maybe have a couple of spins, a couple of moments. For him to outbrake himself like that is unusual. That is one area where John is normally pretty strong, so a bit of an unusual error there, but he's done another fastest middle sector of the race here, so not maybe too much of a surprise that he's latched back on the back of Ben Bennyworth. More interestingly, the gap at the front has just started to come down. Manley's coming to the line now to complete lap 6. Let's do a lap time comparison again. 109.8 for Manley. Buchan's lap time went for track limits, but he's got the gap down to 1.8, which is the same margin he now has on Chris Wilson. So Buchan's taken a few laps to feed his way in, kept 2nd place, got his tyres nice and warm, and now the Scotsman very much on the attack.
He is indeed, so that will be a really interesting thing to just keep an eye on, that gap as the race progresses. Obviously Lewis does like to create that gap at the start of the race and then try and manage it throughout the race. but it will also be interesting to know when Lewis uses his 1 lap of hybrid. We should be able to see it on the timing tower. It might have happened already, and it will be interesting to see how Martin uses his, although Martin won't have that much to use either. I feel quite bad for John in the sense that he's in P6 and only has the 2 laps of hybrid to use compared to all of those in front of him. That's going to make it quite challenging if he uses it to attempt an overtake.
Very true. There's 2 sides to that coin in terms of having more of a race too. Meanwhile, Aidan Carson's looking very racy on the back of Chris Wilson. He's coming straight through. I think Chris Wilson just hasn't quite got the ultimate pace now that everyone's sped up. Carter getting his tyres nice and warm, and he's moved through into 3rd place. Just looking at the times again, Martin Buchan's taken another couple of tenths out of Lewis Manley there. The gap down to about 1.6, 1.7, and then it's another 3 seconds now back to the now championship leader in the Porsches, Aidan Carter, up to 3rd, Wilson back to 4th. Temporarily up to 5th, but couldn't make it stick. They're side by side, or 2 sets of side by side. It's 2 by 2 as they come through the crane. This doesn't normally work. Carr looking very squirrely for Carter. Wilson comes back through though, and Carter's going to try and attack him again as they come through the Trance curve. He's allowing Bennyworth and Dean Smith to come back into play. Got a train of 4 here. Wilson, Carter, Bennyworth, Dean Smith, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th as they come up to McLean's for the 8th time of 18. Great racing.
So Chris Wilson definitely looking like the cork in the bottle at the moment. His pace has dropped to the 110s. Last lap was a 110.7. Which is quite a bit off the pace of those behind him, all in the low 110s or high 190s.
And I think Carter might have another go, or at least line it up for Goddard. He's not quite close enough for a Lundvant on the chicane. Wants to get a better run out as he comes onto the pit straight. The gap between the leaders, by the way, down to 1.4 now, so we'll keep an eye on that. Martin Bucket is coming for Lewis Manley as we approach the halfway stage of the race. Here's come that following pack, though. Wilson, Carter, Bennyworth and John Dean Smith, less than a second between them in 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. Bennyworth very wide, that time coming out of Redgate as they come down the hill once again. Vauxhall leads BMW, leads a brace of Focuses, or Foci if you like. Another bit of a ragged exit from Bennyworth, and John Dean Smith might fancy his chances here into McLean's. You can see in the back of your shot there, looking at Wilson and Carter. We're going to look behind them, see if John Dean's picked up the inside. The answer is no, he couldn't. And Lewis Manley, meanwhile, at the front, we've just seen a fastest second sector of the race. He has responded to get the gap back up to 1.6. You can see the Toyota, the black and purple Toyota of Martin Buchan looming ever larger in his mirrors. So we're coming up to the end of lap 9, the halfway point of this season opening Simply Race Touring Car Championship race at Donington Park. Lewis Manley from pole position, good clean start, has led all the way. His advantage of Martin Buchan is 1.5 seconds. This is the battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. Chris Wilson, Aidan Carter, Ben Bennyworth and John Dean Smith. In the background you can see Stuart Pringle in 7th, who's the best of the newcomers, and Charlie Keir in that bright pink number 99 machine, I should say, in 8th place. Then it's Gareth Ball, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp and Josh Vincent rounding out our field of a dozen.
I do think Aidan is going to have to get this move done soon. Chances of victory slipping away each lap. He's really being held up now by Chris Wilson. He is going to have to send it, and I think it is coming very soon. Yeah, it's going to be a case of eat or be eating, because someone else is going to come for him. It's good defensive positioning there by Chris Wilson into McLean. Bit of a slide from Carter as he tried to get back onto the power. Lights ablaze from John Dean Smith as they come into Coppis for the 10th time. This group now more than 5 seconds behind Buchan. They come onto Starkey straight. I'm wondering maybe Bennyworth might have a go at Carter here. Be coming from way back to do it, but he might fancy a lunge. No. All 4 of these very accomplished, experienced drivers at Simply Race, and none of them known as being particularly unsporting or aggressive. So if we're going to see some races, I expect from all of them to be relatively clean. Must be said as well that Stuart Pringle and Charlie Clear just holding on there in the background. You can just see them at the back of the shot every now and then. They are just about sticking with this group. Yes, they've dropped a few seconds, but very impressive first race for both of those drivers. Yeah, this is a very high level championship to come into. I think all the newcomers are doing very well. There's only a spread of about 1.6 seconds of the whole field in qualifying, which is tiny by Sim Racing's darling. And Bennyworth wide at the old hairpin, and that is all the excuse that John Dean Smith needs to retake 5th position. Meanwhile, Carter's as close as he's been coming to McLean's. He's barely a car length behind, putting Wilson's Astra under all sorts of pressure. Look at that, only half a car length now. Does he fancy it into Coppis, I wonder?
Not quite, but John Dean Smith back up into 5th place, and he will fancy go at Aidan Carter if Carter's not willing to have a go at Wilson.
Wilson is eating up this pressure so well, though. Like, he's really putting the car right where it needs to be. Perfect defensive driving, very fair defensive driving as well. He's making his movements very clear to the drivers. He's not shutting the door, not changing under braking.
I got interrupted as a fastest lap, 1:09.3 from Martin Buchan. If he'd done that in qualifying, it would have put him on the front row of the grid. He's now only 1.1 seconds behind. That's a big late move under braking from Wilson, doing everything he can to try and keep Carter behind. That's probably the best chance one of the best chances Carter's had so far. So a great battle raging for 3rd place, and there's also a great battle raging among the leaders on lap 12, about 2/3 of the way through the race now. So tyre wear will really start to play a factor. Chris Wilson was about to say he's a good, smooth driver. He's not someone you always see at the front making the big headline, but he's a good, consistent driver. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He is not an easy driver to pass by any stretch of the imagination. So Aidan Carter, John Dean Smith and Ben Bennyworth, all with their work cut out over the remaining 6.5 laps of this race. The picture-in-picture you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is with Martin Buchan in 2nd place, looking ahead to your race leader, Lewis Manley. How much pressure can he exert with 6 laps to go? They're coming to the line now, so let's have another look at the lap times and see what it does to the gap this time. 1:09.5 for Manley. Buchan's had his time moving for track limit, but the gap's 1.2, so it was about the same, not much in it. Either way, between your leaders that time. 6 to go at Donington. Still no change, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. Great to see 2 very separate but very intense battles going on through the field, and it's the first of 21 races. After this we go to Brands Indy, then to Thruxton, Alton Park, Croft, Knockhill, the C finale in the Brands Hatch GP circuit in mid-April. Lots to look forward to over the coming winter. Yellow flag sector 3, I think that's Roy, the Dale Crisp or Josh Vincent towards the back. They come up to McLean's again, and it is difficult to try and get up the inside at McLean's. It's because the cars move from one side of the track to the other. There's not the obvious gap, but Carter's made a mistake, and that might allow John Dean Smith to get up the inside coming into Coppice. Will he take full advantage of the opportunity? He's got the inside, and I think he's going to get the move done, John Dean Smith, and he has. He's got up back into 4th place. Great work for the Napa Focus. Just one tiny little loss of traction for Aidan Carter. John Dean Smith through. The gap between the leaders is now down to less than 7/10 of a second. Meanwhile, I should mention Gareth Boyle in 9th, who's done a fastest first sector of the race. But it's all happening now as we have 5 laps to go. You can see on the picture-in-picture there how much closer Buchan is getting to Lewis Manley now. Manley had a bit of a duff lap of 1:10.1. Dean Smith trying to take a wide line. He's gone too wide. That might let Aidan Carter in again. Great racing here with 5 to go. You almost don't know where to look.
We'll keep the main cameras on this battle unless it gets super spicy at the front, because this battle is very intense and could change any second.
Bennyworth pushing hard at the back again and just running a little bit wide. Chris Wilson absolutely superb defending so far, but it will only take much of a gap, and one of these guys is going to take full advantage. Wilson, Dean Smith and Carter, 3rd, 4th and 5th. Great run by John Dean Smith on the exit there, but just caught the grass before to the outside. Will try and cut to the inside, almost some contact. Great defending by Chris Wilson. Absolutely superb drive, but he's going to feel the pressure now. Surely he's going to have to go defensive into the chicane, otherwise John is definitely close enough to fancy a lunge. He's only a couple of feet from the back of him. Is he going to have a go at the inside? Yes. Oh, there's going to be some contact. Oh, there's just a little bit. I think Wilson's going to hold on. Wilson just slammed the door on him. Maybe Debatable could have got some space, but thankfully everyone's come through unscathed. They have 4 laps to go now. Wilson holding on to 3rd. It's allowed Aidan Carter to come back into play as well, and there's now less than 6/10 of a second between the leaders. Little bit of contact there for Carter on the outside. It's now Bennyworth to come in. Hello, Ben. Where have you been? Back into 5th. Might even get back into 4th as he takes John Dean Smith on. And look how much breathing space that's given Chris Wilson. That'll be the answer to Chris Wilson's prayers there. And Aidan Carter suddenly, having been challenging for 3rd, finds himself shuffled back to 6th. And now John Dean Smith's gone wide, and this is the tyre wear coming into play. Bennyworth now finds himself 4th, and Aidan Carter's going to get himself back into 5th. The order chopping and changing all the time with 3.5 laps to go.
After all this, Chris Wilson's now got a second gap to the car behind him.
After all this, I think I'll need a lie down. Absolutely superb racing for 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, right on the limit, thankfully not beyond it. and we still keep a close eye on the picture-in-picture on the leaders. We're going to go to the leaders now. We're on board with Martin Buchan with 3 laps to go. Just a brief look at it. The gap is 0.6 of a second. Manley, Buchan, Wilson, Bennyworth, Carter, Dean Smith. Then it's Pringle, Keir, Boyle, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp and Vincent. This race started off as a little bit of a slow burner, but it really has come to life in the second half. John Dean Smith very, very wide there. That looks like tyres to me. That looks like he really maybe overcooked his tyres a little bit, trying to push on. And also we know he made him a bit of a mistake early on, a bit of a run when he outbraked himself in the early stages near at the back of Aidan Carter. And he now may be paying for the penalty for that much later. Here are your leaders. On board with Buchan. Manley doing everything and control it so far, and I don't think Buchan's going to struggle to get close enough here to have a lunge. I think it's going to require Lewis Manley to make an uncharacteristic mistake with just over 2 laps to go as they come down Starkey Straight, down the hill once again to Goddard's. They are coming up on Josh Vincent to lap him, so hopefully we don't have any back mark related interference. That's not how we want. It's been a great race so far to end. Here's 3rd, 4th and 5th. John Dean Smith, you can see he's dropped well off this now. I think he's going to have to settle for P6 unless an incident ahead. It's Wilson, Bennyworth and Carter, 3rd, 4th and 5th with 2 laps to go. Is Carter going to have a go? That would be a full send from there if he's going to have a go at it. He's having a look. Here we go. He fancies his chances. He's going to take the inside line. Bennyworth's got good grip there. He's going to get good drive, but Carter can't get the inside. Great defensive work by Bennyworth to have the grip on the outside line and hold on to the place.
Just over half a second for the leaders now.
The leaders coming through. McLean's there, 11.5 seconds ahead of Chris Wilson in 3rd. Carter on the grass again as we keep an eye on these chasing pack, but Buchan is just not. We're looking at the other screen that we have available to us. Buchan just not quite close enough to make a move, and there is a possibility here that they may just come up on Josh Vincent to lap him somewhere around the last lap. It could be potentially very poor timing for Lewis Manley, but we'll keep an eye on that for you. They're coming through the chicane now. There's your picture-in-picture, so that's Manley and Buchan, not much between them as they start the last lap. 3rd place, Chris Wilson still hanging on admirably. He's done really well to defend as well as he has. Bennyworth and Castle in 4th and 5th. John D. Smith behind the seat, but let's go with the leaders for the last lap. What pressure can Buchan exert? Can he force Manley as the tyres deteriorate into a mistake? This is as close as he's been, but has Buchan just left himself a little bit too much to do after just taking it easy early on and taking a few laps to get past Chris Wilson? You can see Buchan pushing on through the old hairpin for the final time. He couldn't have a lunge into the last corner, could he? You never know with Martin Buchan. Through the Schwantz curves. We'll keep an eye on that battle for 3rd place on your picture-in-picture there. Just McLean's, Coppice and the chicane to go. Through McLean's. Manley still in control, just a couple of corners away from picking up the win in the season opener. Into Coppice now. Manley's running a little bit wider, but I think it's going to require a mistake now because I don't think Buchan is going to be close enough to yellow in sector 2. I don't think they're on the top 6. The battle for 3rd place, you may see a lunge into the final corner. We'll have to keep an eye on that as well. Manley, nice defensive positioning. He's got to get the drive. He can't afford any screwy bits through the last corner, but here he comes. He's done the job very well in round 1 of Simply Drake's touring car. The 23-22-24 go to Lewis Manley from Martin Buchan. Is there going to be a lunge for 3rd place? I don't think there is. Here comes Chris Wilson. What a defensive drive by the Minister of Defence. Chris Wilson just holds on to 3rd ahead of Ben Bennyworth. Aidan Carter has to settle for 5th. Then it's John Dean Smith, and it looks like, I don't know if Stuart Pringle had to make a bit of a mistake and fell back, but it looks like Charlie Keir will just come through in the bright pink car, and he is going to be the best of the newcomers in 7th spot. Here he is crossing the line. Good result there for Charlie. Then it'll be Stuart Pringle, I think, in 8th, and then, barring any mistakes, the rest of the field quite spread out. Be Gareth Ball, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp, and Josh Vincent, who didn't quite get lapped in the end, so he should complete the full 18 laps. That is Ben Crisp, I think, crossing the line. Yeah, it is in 10th place for car number 10. There's Dale Crisp, and then Josh Vincent in those lovely Gulf colours. Round out the field. Lewis Manley's final margin of victory, 0.242 of a second, and Chris Wilson holding off Ben Bennyworth for 3rd by 0.159. So a close race for 1st, a close race for 3rd, and Grant, it has to be said, a race that really came to life kind of around the halfway mark.
Yeah, it really picked up. It was brewing throughout that whole first stage of the race, and I think people just got too frustrated behind Chris and just started going for those moves and just made mistakes, lost time by doing so. Yeah, I mean, fair play to Chris, holding everybody off. Really great racing. If that's race 1, I can't wait for race 2.
Yeah, so that result of race 1, you can see there, Manley, Buchan, Wilson, Bennyworth, Carter, Dean Smith. That is your grid for race 2 as well. How much of an impact will it make on Manley with Martin Buchan this time being able to start from the front row? We're going to take a break for a couple of minutes, and hopefully we will be able to have some interviews with your top 3 finishers. Third place, Chris Wilson, runner-up Martin Buchan, and the winner of the opening round of the touring car season, Lewis Manley. So a great opening round of the Simply Race Touring Car Championship here at Donington Park, and we start with our third place finisher and a driver in a fantastic rearguard action. How did you soak up the pressure, Chris Wilson?
Don't completely know, to be honest. There's a lot of fast charging boys behind us through that race, so yeah, just have to make that the widest Astra in town and hope for the best.
Yeah, I didn't know Astras came that wide without the body kit. How was sort of tyre wear in that race? Were you struggling on towards the end? I know John had a big lunge at you, but apart from that, you just about seemed to have everything covered.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was clearly driving a bit over defensively just to cover myself. The tyres, I might have gone a bit too hard in the first few laps pushing Martin, but once he started to pull away, it was a case of we'll just go for third. See a group of guys coming up behind you, just rinse the tyres for all they're worth. Everything counts at this point.
And how are you finding the Astra to drive? I mean, is it a car you're enjoying and feeling you're getting a lot out of?
Yeah, I mean, I tested a few of the cars pre-season. I mean, ultimately, the decision to drive this car came down to having a baby that I let randomly pick my car for me for the year.
Yep,
but
good old Genevieve.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, no, it was a good car. It was one of the ones I had my eye on anyway. I knew most people would probably overlook it because she's a bit of an old girl now. But, no, it's not a bad motor at all.
Great effort. Thank you very much, Chris. Great job on that podium finish. I'll just take that off you. There we go. Thank you very much. All the best for race 2. And we will now, not for the first time today, bring in Martin Buchan in better circumstances than... oh, he's already got one on. Brilliant. Oh, he's fully equipped. Look at this. Last time I spoke to you was because you crashed on the first lap. This time you made amends. But you did. I'm just stating fact. Second place this time, just not quite enough to be able to have a go at Lewis at the end.
No, just my run at McLean's wasn't the best, and I needed a bit more hybrid. I ran out of it just when I needed it, but P2, I'll take that after quali. So
it was a steady first few laps. Obviously, it took you a little while to get back past Chris. Was that sort of deliberate strategy on your part to feel your way in, or was it just difficult to get past him?
Well, he didn't pass me. I was ahead of him all the way. You on about? Chris was trying to get past me all the time at the start.
It's been a long race. I'm sorry about that.
Dan.
It's been a long day. Yeah, that's
what
my
are you
fault.
watching? You're like
okay.
David Croft here. making
Oh, God,
things.
come on. No, careful. You can go off some people. Okay, well, I'm going to rephrase that question in light of the new facts that I am now aware. Were you taking it easy on the open laps to feel your way in? Because obviously Lewis built up a good gap early on.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to get used to this front wheel drive car and cold, because every practice time I've been out of practice, first lap out, I've basically spun it off, and I've gone, I don't like the cold tyres, so didn't have that, because last year it was rear wheel drive, so didn't have, well, I guess the problem was worse in that car actually, so yeah, I should have gone quicker, but I mean, yeah, just didn't want to bin it, just to get into it, get a nice rhythm, and then just see what happens. Really.
And just one more question, how hard is it to adapt from driving the Porsche as you were earlier to driving something like this front wheel drive pretty much immediately?
It's a good job I've got a 30-minute practice session, I'm not going to lie. It's harder the other way though, because when I've done it touring car to Porsche, I've basically gone, what is this Porsche thing about? It's just like an alien. This is actually nice and easy to drive. It's just, it's a Toyota.
And we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Martin. All the best for race 2. Obviously,
Thank
in a
you.
better grip position on the front row this time. And we will bring in our race winner, Lewis Manley. Very well done, Lewis. A lights to flag win from pole position, about as good as it gets, but lots of pressure from Martin towards the end there.
Indeed, absolutely. I was really getting a bit leery towards the end because he was really closing. And then there was one of the laps, lap 12, and I hit a bit of the, I don't know what it was in front of me, but I just hit it past Coppice. So it lifted my front car up, so I thought, oh, this could cost me the race here. So thankfully it didn't. So, and obviously the start was critical, so obviously I had to pull away so I can create a gap a little bit, so I can just calm down a little bit. And then of course Martin closed in at the end, but thankfully just had enough to win the race. So really happy to start like this. As I always say, the first race is always the most nerve because you want to settle down. So always a good way to start.
That's good. Obviously, Toyota last year, Ford this year. What was your thinking behind the changing car for this season?
I just think the Ford in testing just looked the smoothest and the best one to use because it seemed to have much more grip on the car. So I had a decision of Hyundai or Ford, so I thought I'd go for Ford because it looked to be the best one. So thankfully it's paid off. So I took the pole position and won the race. Didn't quite get the fastest lap, but as long as you win the race, that's the most important.
And is the Ford maybe a bit easier to manage tyres and tyre wear over a full race distance?
Probably a little bit, yeah, because I think Hyundai may have slightly better on their qualifying trim, but I think the race trim, I think the Ford's a little bit better on the tyres, so I just gone for that one, and it seemed to pay off. So obviously, first race win of the season, it's always the perfect way to start.
That's brilliant. Lewis, thank you very much. Congratulations again. Of course, Lewis will be on pole position for race 2, but he will have Martin Buchan alongside him this time. We're going to take a very short break. Thank you once again for your company here at Donington Park this afternoon. Race 2 coming up for Simply Race Touring Cars very shortly with Lewis Manley on pole position. See you then.
Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now?
It's time for your second helping of Simply Race Touring Car Championship action at Donington Park today, the opening round of the 2023-24 season. Race 2 just about to get underway. You're about to see the drivers set up on their formation lap. Here is the grid. Not sure about the cars, some of the cars on the graphics there, but the information on it is correct. Lewis Manley, winner of race 1, will start with Martin Buchan alongside him on the front row. Chris Wilson and Ben Bennyworth on row 2. Then Aidan Carter, John Dean Smith, Charlie Keir, the best of the newcomers, on row 3 in that lovely spotty pink and orange car. And then Stuart Pringle on row 4. Then Gareth Boyle, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp and Josh Vincent. It is the same starting order as the finishing order of race 1 a short time ago. Lewis Manley starting the season in winning ways, but Martin Buchan less than a quarter of a second behind him at the end, and this time, unlike in race 1, Buchan is starting on the front row, so an interesting 18-lap race in prospect. And again, we could see a great battle at the front, and it'll be interesting to see if Chris Wilson can emulate his superb defensive driving to hold off Ben Bennyworth, Aidan Carter and John Dean Smith in a very hard-won podium in that Vauxhall Astra. He starts P3. John Dean Smith, we know, has got very good pace in this Focus this weekend. A couple of small errors here and there. He will want to fight his way through from 6th spot. The hybrid allocation obviously has been rearranged again on grid order. So, well, again, Lewis Manley will only have 1 lap of hybrid available. He'll get to use it for up to maximum of 15 seconds on that lap. Martin Buchan will have 2 laps. Chris Wilson 3, Ben Bennyworth 4, Aidan Carter 5, John Dean Smith 6, Charlie Keir 7, and then everyone you see on your timing tower there from Stuart Pringle down will have the full 8 laps. And for those of you maybe weren't joining us earlier, just a word on tyres, because there are obviously different tyre rules and different rounds of the Simply Race Touring Car Championship. It is very simple this weekend. It is medium tyres for all drivers for all 3 races. So, interesting to hear your thoughts, Grant, before we get this race underway. How much more competitive do you think Buchan will be this time, given he gets the chance to get a clean start and maybe stay close to Lewis Manley from the get-go?
I do wonder if he will try and push that a little bit more. He just needs to get the getaway this time. The start for him is critical. We saw, obviously, the Chris Wilson trade in race 1 as well. That's the thing I'm most looking forward to seeing. The resumption of that, really. Can Chris hold off 3rd place? Are we going to get more desperate moves as the race goes on? I think we will. I think people are going to try and get in front of Chris as quickly as possible this time around.
Yeah, the lot of the sort of first race there felt a little bit conservative by touring car standards. People want to feel their way in. Lots of new cars, getting back used to it. I think maybe because they've been away for a few months or they've been racing in Strez instead. Particularly if drivers haven't had much track time, or in the case of someone like Martin Buchan or Aidan Carter, because they were racing the Porsches this morning, which are a very different kettle of fish. So, drivers come to the starting grid for another 18-lap race of the 1.9-mile Donington Park National Circuit. Manley on the left, Buchan on the right, Wilson and Bennyworth behind them. It's round 2 of the Simply Race Touring Car Championship at Donington Park National. We wait for the lights for the race to get underway. Another long hold. And they're off. Good start from Manley. Buchan slotting into 2nd. Wilson going defensive once again for 3rd. John Dean Smith ran wide on the first line, going for the same tactic again. Leaving him vulnerable, but they come through and it's going to be Manley. Then Buchan. Wilson trying to get onto the inside and doesn't quite make it, with one car off towards the back. Wilson in 3rd, right behind Buchan. Then it's Bennyworth. Then that is Carter. And then it's John Dean Smith and Stuart Pringle in 6th and 7th. Charlie Keir in 8th as they come down to the old hairpin for the first time and up towards the Schwanskers. Oh, 2 cars, all 3 and 4. Oh, there's all sorts of cars off at the back. Oh, dearie me, I think that's Boyle, Crisp, Vincent, Pringle, both Chris and everything, I think have all gone off at the back. A huge incident involving most of the front runners, and that's some nasty contact down the crane occurs. We'll try and find a replay for that a little bit later on, and that leaves more experienced heads to go for it. I think Wilson was looking to make a move there on Buchan. We look in the back to see if he's got the move done. He's got the inside line, he may well have. John Dean Smith managed to get past Ben Bennyworth, as has Aidan Carter. Carter 4th and John Dean Smith up to 5th now. Manley in control at the end of the first lap. But Buchan, if he wants Charles Manley, does not want to lose this place to Chris Wilson. We look again in the background to see if we can see them. Wilson's got the move done. Great move by Chris Wilson. It changes the dynamic of this race entirely. Manley leads across the line by almost 2 seconds from Chris Wilson. Then it's Buchan, who's now under pressure from Aidan Carter, trying to go around the outside of him into Red Gate. Couldn't get it done. So Carter 4th, Dean Smith 5th. Then it's Ben Bennyworth in 6th, then Charlie Keir in 7th, and then everyone else recovering from that horrible incident in the background. Vincent, Pringle, Dale Crisp, Boyle and Ben Crisp. Hopefully in a couple of laps time we'll be able to give you a replay and retrace what happened there that absolutely blew out most of the back half of the field.
I believe so. I think we're potentially going to get a race restart. Yes, we are. As we can see, yep. So we're going to restart and go again.
It did seem unusual to have an incident that big with that many cars who were that spread out. So a red flag, which I'm sure Lewis Manley will be a bit frustrated about. I would imagine Martin Buchan might be quite relieved, having lost that second place to Chris Wilson at the end of the first lap. So we're going to go off air just for a couple of minutes while they get everything restarted, and when we have the restart, we're back with you very shortly.
Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now.
So apologies for those mild technical issues, but thankfully we are able to get everything restarted relatively quickly. So the drivers are about to go off on another formation lap, I believe. Yep, I'm getting a nod from Grant, so that means yes. And then we will have another go at getting race 2 underway. Lewis Manley, I think, will feel a little bit frustrated, given at the time he was 2 seconds up in front up the road, and had Chris Wilson holding everyone else up in second place. It was a dream scenario there for Lewis Manley, and now he's going to have to do it all over again. So there's your grid: Manley, Buchan, Wilson, Bennyworth, Carter, Dean Smith, Keir, Pringle, Boyle, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp, and then Vincent at the back of this 12-car grid. The race will be restarted for the full distance. We're not going to knock any laps off, so it still remains an 18-lap race as Lewis Manley leads the field off on their second formation lap. Good to have such a vocal crowd watching the racing here at Donington Park. Great sport for the championship as ever, and thanks once again to everyone joining us on the YouTubes. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, apologies if you can hear some screaming people in the background. We've got a new Laser Quest venue that's opened up underneath us, so obviously their clientele were a little bit younger than ours, so if you can hear them on the stream, apologies.
But given how good the racing's been so far today, they're not having as much fun as we are, because I've thoroughly enjoyed today so far.
Yeah, we've had some really good racing already, and still 2 more races to go, including our reverse grid race.
Absolutely, and Lewis Manley once again leads. And Manley, a bit like Martin Buchan, is one of the slower drivers when it comes to formation laps. We saw in the Porsches earlier, Aidan Carter was like, get on with it. Manley and Buchan are not normally known for being in a particular rush to bring the field round. But if you're, if you're at the front of the field, that is your right. It's his prerogative. He's entirely within his right to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone's got their own comfortable way of starting. I think it's like, if you try something different, you're not going to be in the same mindset as you normally would be. So just playing it as you know it. Slow formation lap's always good. As long as you're getting good brake temperature, then that's the main thing I would say. But yeah, interesting. Like I don't think the weaving really does a huge amount with these front-wheel drive cars, if I'm brutally honest with you. But yeah, it's good to see a lot of rotation.
Someone like Aidan Carter in particular being in the rear-wheel drive BMW is probably going to get more benefit from it. I mean, he has already mentioned today about tyre temps, so you can see him actually weaving there on the left-hand side of your picture as he comes to his 5th position on the grid, so he's keen to get as much temperature as he can. Josh Vincent in the Golf livery Vocus is the last driver onto the grid, and we get ready to go racing a restarted second round of the Simply Race Touring Car Championship. 18 laps of the National Circuit at Donington Park. Manley on the left in the Ford, Buchan on the right in the Toyota. We are underway. Very slow start for Aidan Carter. Almost gets knocked off the track with the drivers coming around him. He's fallen well back. I don't know if he's got to engage first, so we'll find out later on. It's going to be Manley who leads from Buchan, Wilson, Bettyworth trying to go round the outside in 4th place. Can't quite make it. John D. Smith in 5th, and that bright pink machine of Charlie Keir rounds out the top 6 as they come through the Craner curves for the first time. Another good solid getaway for Lewis Manley. Buchan will want to keep him honest. He will not want to fall behind Christian in the first start, and that was Stuart Pringle exiting stage right on the grass. He's actually done quite well to save it. He didn't spin it all the way round. He's going to fall to the back of the field. More or less he has fallen to the back of the field, but well recovered, because that looked like it might have been a much bigger incident. John D. Smith up the inside at McLean's, I think, on Ben Benioff. He has got through. Josh Vincent's just run wide at McLean's in the background. He'll rejoin as well. Good start for JDS though. He's gone from 6th up to 4th with Carter's bad start and getting past Bennyworth as well. On to Starkey Straight for the first time of 18. Manley, Buchan, Wilson. We look further back here. Dean Smith, Bennyworth. That's Charlie Keir. That's Gareth Boyle in 7th place in the number 51 car ahead of Aidan Carter, who's got work to do after an extremely sluggish start off the line in the BMW. So Manley leads by 0.8 from Buchan. That's much less an advantage than he had in the original start. Chris Wilson keeping Buchan honest in that 3rd place. John Dean Smith will be glad to be through into 4th. He's still only 1 second behind Wilson in turn. And where's Manley going? Manley's off. I don't know if there's been a problem, but Manley just got his line wrong through the first part of the crane, has caught the right-hand side of the tyre on the grass and has gone completely off at the old hairpin. A rare major mistake from Lewis Manley, and he's gone straight out of the lead. We don't know if that's a technical problem, whether it's a driver error. We will find out. But Martin Buchan's just gone off there. He's now taken over the lead. The race carrying on, at least for the time being, while we investigate whether it's a technical problem or not. It's Buchan from Wilson. Dean Smith is 3rd. Bennyworth in 4th. Charlie Keir now finds himself in 5th place. Lewis Manley all the way back in last place now. He has rejoined, but finds himself well off the pace. He's just gone a little bit wide there. So it could have been driver error. Could it have been a technical problem? We will find out over the next lap or two, but it is Buchan who leads at the end of lap 2. Chris Wilson, though, is right behind him, goes wide to try and get the line into Redgate. Charlie Keir in 5th place, remember a rookie, does the fastest lap of the race as the leaders come through Redgate. John Dean Smith is still there. He's in a second of the lead as well. Oh, and I think, yeah, and John Dean Smith's gone off there at the same point, and I think that's going to be, I think that's technical. That's just that, I mean, the car just completely snapped off and he hadn't gone off at all. With Manley, you weren't sure because of the because of how we put some wheels on the grass, but that wasn't very obvious. Chris Wilson has moved into the lead here, but I think, yeah, this might be technical in nature, and I think, unfortunately, we might be having another stoppage. The race carries on, but now for the time being, while we just get that investigated for you, but I think this one, unfortunately, might have to be called as well. So Wilson leading for the time being from Buchan and Bennyworth. Charlie Keir now finds himself 4th. John Dean Smith and Lewis Manley both going off in very strange circumstances through the Cana curves. Over the line to complete lap 4. So we're just looking at race control, we're looking into the situation. The race will continue for the time being. So Chris Wilson now finds himself in the lead, managed to get past Martin Buchan. Ben Bennyworth in the blue and green car there is 3rd. Charlie Keir holding his own in 4th. Aidan Carter's now recovered into 5th place, ahead of Gareth Ball, then Ben Crisp, Stuart Pringle, Dale Crisp and Josh Vincent, and then John Dean Smith and Lewis Manley, who have both rejoined. They're pretty much nose to tail at the back of the field, but they're 13 seconds off the lead with a lot of traffic in front of them. Round copies onto Starkey straight once again, and Chris Wilson. We heard from him how he was very happy with himself and how well he managed to defend in race 1, having soaked up so much pressure through the second half of that race, hold on to 3rd place, now potentially find himself in position to win one. All car off on the grass at the back, that is Gareth Boyle. He holds on to his 6th place for now. Fast up the race from Wilson, 1:09.9. It's a little bit off the ultimate pace. Martin Buchan did a 1:09.3 in race 1. John Dean Smith, great recovery given he's been off 1:09.6 on tyres that obviously will not feel particularly fresh. Martin Buchan now is trying to recover that lead as they come through the old airpin for the 5th time. Aidan Carter's recovering as well. He's right on the back of Charlie Keir in the background, so Carter, I think, will try and regain 4th spot in relatively short order. You might just be able to catch them in the back of your picture there. The bright pink car of Charlie Keir coming to pressure from the BMW of Aidan Carter. As we stick with the leaders, Charlie Keir's just made a mistake there at Coppice, and that's allowed Aidan Carter to move up into 4th place. I think Ben Crisp might have gone off as well. Dale Crisp has, certainly. Across the line once again, Wilson still just ahead of Buchan, then Bennyworth, Carter and Keir. It'll be interesting to see how much progress Aidan Carter is able to make now that he's cleared Charlie Keir. He's 1.3 seconds behind Bennyworth at the start of this lap. Vauxhall leads Toyota, leads Ford, leads BMW. 4 different makes of car in the top 4. Focus is dominating the grid this year. At the 12 cars, 6 of them are Focuses, but we have Toyota, we have Vauxhall, we have BMW. Still, even more variety in this year's championship than we had last year.
Just to confirm, we are staying green.
And there we are from Grant Lyman there, confirmation from race control. The race is going to continue as is. So Wilson and Buchan looking increasingly assertive in wanting to try and get past and regain that lead and keep Chris Wilson as honest as he can. We've seen in race 1 how well Wilson can defend. Well, doing that for another 12 laps from a driver as quick as Martin Buchan, that may be another proposition altogether. Buchan's right on the back when they come across the line. Carter on the grass but rejoins in 4th. Bit of a dummy from Buchan. Will he ever go up the inside? I think he is into Redgate. I don't think as much Chris Wilson can do. Tries to turn in, a little bit of contact, but he finds that Buchan's already there. Great move. Martin Buchan at the start of lap 7 retakes the lead. And a fastest lap from Lewis Manley, recovering in 9th. He's passed John Dean Smith on that lap. That time, 1:09.277, would have been good enough for pole position. I can see him on our second screen there that he's managed to clear John Dean Smith, and he will very much be on the recovery charge. We know how quick Lewis Manley is, and he will still think with 12 laps to go, he could finish significantly higher than the 9th place he's currently in. I think Stuart Pringle's had an off as well, so he's gained a place there straight away. And in fact up to 7th now, so The race starting to settle down at the front. Buchan has just over half a second on Wilson, who has a second on Bennyworth, who has a second and a half on Carter. But if you look at Ben Crisp and Charlie Keir, who are newcomers to the championship, you would imagine Lewis Manley make up to at least into the top 5. Well, Manley and Dean Smith have both just passed Ben Crisp. They're already up to 6th and 7th. So there's Charlie Keir in the pink car on the back in 5th. Lewis Manley is 7 seconds behind him. Just coming through, you can see Goddard's now with John Dean Smith just behind him. They will make up Charlie Keir at least and get back onto the front of this leading sextet as we move on to lap number 8. Chris Wilson, I'm sure, will be very happy to pick up second place, even if he's not able to quite match the pace of Martin Buchan. But we'll keep a very close eye on Lewis Manley and John Lee Smith on the recovery charge. Manley, another very quick lap last time round, 1:09.4. Definitely trying to make up a lost time after that off in the early stages of this race. Buchan in charge. They're Aidan Carter. He's had a couple of minor offs, but recovering well after a truly dreadful start. And now we look at Manley and Dean Smith. Linus Stern, having both had some very strange offs at Craner Curve. They are now 6th and 7th, and they are lapping substantially quicker than Charlie Keir ahead of them as they come to the end of lap 8. We'll look at the lap times across the line now, just to underline the scale of the time that they're making up. Charlie Keir does a 1:10.7. Lewis Manley does a 1:09.7, so a second quicker on that lap. John Dean Smith was pinged for track limits on that lap, but I think he did about the same because he's still right there with Manley himself. Meanwhile, I think Ben Bennyworth is just starting to reel in Chris Wilson for second spot because there's only 0.6 between them now on the timing screen. So once again, Chris Wilson may have to mount a rearguard action in the second half of this race, just as he did in race 1. Definitely keep an eye on that for you. Aidan Carter is getting quite close as well. I think we may have that was a bit of a Chris Wilson trolley train. Once again, Martin Buchan's lead is now up to just under a second and a half. Just 3 seconds in the top 4, but Martin Buchan will go into the second half of this race in a very strong position. Over the line again, Manley takes another 8/10 out of Charlie Keir that time. The gap down to 4.3 seconds now. So with 9 laps to go, you'd have to think that there's a good chance that the way towards the end of the race. That is a Stuart Pringle's car, which is stricken on the exit of Redgate, which I think is why it keeps flashing up saying yellow in Sector 1. It looks like, unfortunately, he's had to drop out of this race. Manley and Dean Smith continue their recovery charge. Really taking a lot of time out of Charlie Keir now. I think they're taking out more than a second on this lap. So they should be able to catch him well before the end of the race, but they are, what, just looking, trying to bit of maths, more than 9 seconds behind Aidan Carter in 4th. So unless there are some mistakes further ahead, I think this is pretty much as far as they will go. And I think we need to have another look at the battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th, because that's got a lot closer than it was the last time we saw it. Chris Wilson once again defending from Ben Bennyworth and Aidan Carter. There they are, they're 1.7 seconds behind the race leader Martin Buchan. And once again, Chris Wilson will be looking in his mirrors just as much as he's looking at the track ahead. Vauxhall leads Ford, who's gone wide again. We've seen that a lot from Ben Bennyworth today, just going a bit too wide and running onto the grass on the exit of the old hairpin. Now, I don't know if Carter's managed to get the line up to the inside of McLean's. He has. Great move, Aidan Carter capitalising on Ben Bennyworth's mistake. Gets a bit squirrely himself coming out of McLean's there, but he gets the move done. And Aidan Carter, having dropped all the way back as far as, 8th or 9th after that terrible start, maybe on course for a podium here. He's up to 3rd, and his sights now firmly be set on Chris Wilson, 1.2 seconds up the road. We come towards the end of lap 11, so 7 laps to go. Wilson now crosses the line. I don't know if Carter's already started to chase him down. He has. The gap's down to 1 second. We are looking here at Ben Crisp and Gareth Boyle, who are 8th and 9th. And back to Ben Bennyworth, who is now down to 4th place. Ben lost out on 3rd place in this championship last year on countback. He and Adam Christopher finished level on points for 3rd, but Adam had won 4 races. Ben didn't actually win any, somehow. We were all very surprised. We totted it up at the end to do the countback calculation and realised that Ben hadn't only won races. We know he's a good, consistent competitor, but look how quickly Aidan Carter has closed the gap to Chris Wilson. There's only been a lap since he did the overtake. The split says 9/10, so there you go. It's down to half a second now. And Aidan Carter very much fancies P2, even if I think Martin Buchan might be slightly beyond him. Buchan now with the lead of over 2 seconds. On board with the BMW towards the Goddard chicane once again. You can see Buchan ahead. There's Wilson and Carter, and Bennyworth in the background. Lewis Manley and John Dean Smith have now both cleared Charlie Keir, so Manley is now back up to 5th. John Dean Smith is 6th, just right in the background. You can see them still nose to tail. I think John Dean Smith more than happy, at least for the time being, to follow Manley home and use him as his benchmark to try and charge back up through the field after those earlier offs. As we head into the final third of race 2. Remember, race 3, reverse grid. Pole position could be anywhere between 6th and 12th. So John D. Smith, where he is behind Lewis Manley, would put himself in contention for a reverse grid pole. Error by Wilson though. Well, for a second lap in a row, just shut the door. Was one of Carter would get the chance to get the inside of McLean, but fell just agonisingly short of it. Both of them really pushing on through McLean, up the hill to Coppice. Wilson going defensive once again, takes one move and the racing line's out to do it. Big send up the inside though from Carter. Wilson leaves in the room, but Carter has to just back out of it. Aidan looking much more comfortable with the grip levels of his car in this race than he did in race 1, but he has to be careful because Ben Bennyworth is still there, very much in contention. Through Goddard once again. Buchan will cross the line now to complete lap 13, so 5 laps to go now, and it's Wilson, Carter and Bennyworth, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And then just in the background there you can still see Manley and Dean Smith nose to tail in 5th and 6th. In fact, I think John D. Smith might be able to get past Lewis Manley. He's having a look round the outside into Redgate. You don't do that to Lewis Manley very often. Will he try and get the cut back? He tried to do it in the Porsche earlier on, didn't work. Both of them run very wide, both in the focuses. And down through Redgate once again as they scrap it out for 5th place. I think we need to go back to the battle for 2nd, Grant, because Aidan Carter, I think, is all over the back of Chris Wilson. Yes, he is, as they come up the hill towards Coppice now once again. We've got a great battle for 2nd, a great battle for 5th. Wonder if maybe we can go picture in picture on the Manley-Dean Smith battle, if that's possible. We can keep an eye on both of them. More great action later on in the race, just as we saw in race 1. There's Manley and Dean Smith in the bottom half of your picture in 4th, 5th and 6th. We can keep an eye on them. Thank you very much for that, Grant. Our main cab remains on Wilson and Carter. All round the outside again, John Dean Smith looking. Will he try and find the gap to come through the second part of the corner? Ooh, very tight. There could be an argument as to whether Manley should have given him the space. They're still side by side. Manley will have the inside for Redgate. John D. Smith was ahead over the line by 36 thousandths. Can he get it stopped? I think John's going to try and cut back, take the late apex, try and get on the inside for Hollywood. He's done it really well. He's been trying that a few times. He couldn't quite get the traction to get alongside him down into Hollywood. Once again, normally you see the battles at the start of the race, seeing them more here towards the end, as was the case in race 1. Martin Buchan, 3.6 seconds to the good. Chris Wilson is looking at him, so the 20 points is there for the taking for Martin Buchan. And with it, with Lewis Manley further down the field, Buchan would take over the early lead in the championship. Round the outside now, Aidan Carter at Coppice. That's hard work round there. It's such a long right-hander. You're trying to get back onto the grippy part of the tyres. They come down the Starkey straight now once again. It'll be 3 laps to go at the end of this one. Carter thinks about sending it, decides not to. Dean Smith fallen a little bit way back from Lewis Manley now. Look how hard Aidan Carter was hustling that BMW through the chicane. I think he might have another go now with 3 to go. into reggae once again. Little bit of a defensive line from Chris Wilson. He's kind of got that perfected. But look how much slower he was through the apex. Aidan Carter, if anything, had to get off the throttle to get out of it. It was almost going too quickly. John Dean Smith, picture in picture, trying to go wide on Manley again. Manley defending very well, and John out onto the green, onto the gravel. He's going to drop back once again. We'll focus on this battle for second. The widest Vauxhall Astra you've ever seen that hasn't had a Halfords body kit put on it. Carter again goes down the outside, but look, this is just bringing Bennyworth into play again. Second, third and fourth. All bit of contact there as Wilson tries to go defensive. Just about managed to shut the door. This is the kind of touring car racing we love. This defensive line. Can Carter get onto the inside? Yes, he can. Now he can do it. Forced it about a couple of corners ahead. You can really link these moves together at Donington. Carter has the inside line for the hairpin, but Wilson's managed to get the drive and get the length ahead to shut the door once again. How is he doing this? We know Chris Wilson's an accomplished driver, but 2 races in a row to put these defensive displays in place to earn some great results in that Astra.
I think Chris utilised his hybrid. I think Chris just used. He's probably been saving it. Oh, here we go.
Carter again now into Redgate. He's going to leave in the room. Oh, it's Vincent contact. Carter's getting off, and I'm all very debatable about whether Chris could have left in the room or not. He's rejoined as Aidan Carter, but it has allowed Ben Bennyworth through into third place. I'm sure Racewell will at least have a look at that. Aidan Carter was kind of alongside, but Chris Wilson did try to shut the door very robustly, so it is something the stewards will, I'm sure, take a look at, and we'll hear about that probably after the race, because we do only have 1.5 laps to go. It's Buchan, Wilson, Bennyworth, Carter. Lewis Manley now looks pretty secure in 5th, because he's just over 1 second ahead of John Dean Smith. There is the leader, Martin Buchan. We almost forgot about him, but he's now more than 6 seconds to the good. Second place in race 1, a win in race 2, 37 points he's on course for, which will compare with 31 for Lewis Manley. And actually, if he finishes second in this race, Chris Wilson will have 32. So here comes Martin Buchan to start his last lap. And only now do Wilson and Bennyworth come through to cross the timing line. And Bennyworth is still only, not much more than half a second behind him. It's just under half a second, in fact. So the battle for second and third is not over yet. We go on to the final lap. What's been a tumultuous affair, certainly with what happened earlier on with the restart, and then some big offs for Manley and for Dean Smith as well, that they've fought their way back into the top 6. And another great rearguard action from Chris Wilson. He's got another half a lap to hold on for a second place, and at least for the time being, second in the championship. Yellow in sector 3, I don't think involved any of the leaders. They come through McLean's up towards Coppice for the final time. Just Coppice in the chicane to go now for Chris Wilson to pick up 17. Very easy points indeed, but Bennyworth's got a lot closer. Wilson has to go very, very defensive. We're going to wait. I think Martin Buchan is going to cross the line about the same time these two guys come down to the final chicane. And how defensive is Wilson going to go? He's left the door open there. Will Bennyworth go for a full send? He won't. I think Wilson's got it. Martin Buchan comes across the line to win round 2 of Sync Race Touring Cars, and Chris Wilson is just going to hold off for second. Ben Bennyworth third. Aidan Carter has to settle for 4th spot after that bad start. And then there's Lewis Manley and John D. Smith recovering to finish 5th and 6th. And then of the newcomers of the championship, I think Charlie Keir, there he is in that bright pink machine. He's going to come through to finish in 7th. And then, barring any disaster, it should be Gareth Boyle, Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp, Josh Vincent. And unfortunately, Stuart Pringle has to drop out around about half distance. But no doubt to the winner, his final winning margin just over 7 seconds. Chris Wilson holding up by just over 2/10 from Ben Bennyworth in second. And by my very provisional math, doing it in my head, I make that Martin Buchan your championship leader with 37 points, ahead of Chris Wilson with 32 and Lewis Manley with 31. We now wait to see who will be on pole position for race 3. It could be, we'll have the random draw, it could be anywhere between 6 and 12. If it is 6, that would make for a very interesting race for John Dean Smith, with all of the newer drivers between him and the more experienced heads at the back of the pack. So a bit of a collision there just after the finish line there, nothing too much to worry about. That car's gone straight back into the paddock. So that rounds out race 2. I think hopefully we can get the results on the screen. Martin Buchan, a deserved winner, and with it takes the championship lead from Chris Wilson and Ben Bennyworth. And hopefully we'll get the guys in to discuss their races very shortly.
Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now?
Well, welcome back everyone, back to Donington Park for race 3, last race of the day in the opening round of the Simply Race Touring Car Championship for 2023-24. The cars lining up for the reverse grid race. I'll come to the grid in a moment just to clear up obviously what happened in race 2, which was restarted, and there were a few technical problems, issue with lag and so on that affected Lewis Manley and John Dean Smith in particular. We did confirm those were technical problems rather than driver error. The stewards made the decision that whereas the first race was stopped because it was a mass crash that affected everyone and people getting taken out by others, and they took the decision to restart it. In this case, with the second start of Manley and Dean Smith, they were isolated incidents with no one else involved, and while it is extremely unfortunate for those two drivers, the race carried on and the result stands as was the order at the end of the race. So Lewis Manley and John Dean Smith classified 5th and 6th in that race. The silver lining for those two is the reverse grid draw came out as 7, meaning that Lewis Manley's 3rd on the grid and John Dean Smith is 2nd. It also means that Charlie Keir, who's really impressed today as one of our newcomer drivers, he's on pole position, but he's got the 6 really experienced drivers in the field behind him. It's Charlie Keir in the bright pink number 99 car. There he is. He will start from pole position with John Dean Smith alongside him on the front row, Lewis Manley and Aidan Carter on row 2, Ben Bennyworth and Chris Wilson on row 3. The race 2 winner and championship leader Martin Buchan is leading the championship by 5 points. He's on row 4 with Gareth Boyle. Then it's Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp, Josh Vincent and Stuart Pringle who will round out the grid of 12 cars. I'm just looking at the split times. Is Stuart still here? I'm looking at those split times on the... I don't know if he's actually... still running. I'm looking at this, I'm not sure. He did drop out of race 2. Oh no. Yeah, I think Stuart's just had a little bit of a minor issue. He is. Oh yeah, he's just had a little bit of an issue on the at the start of his warm-up lap, so he's a little bit behind. So. But he is catching up. He's only just coming through the craters now, so it is going to be quite a long hold on the grid for everyone. Stewart's a good sort of 40 to 45 seconds behind everybody. He's only just coming up to the old hairpin now. So, while the leaders are already lining up on the grid, they are going to be there, I think, for a while. He's gone off at the old hairpin. That's something maybe amiss with his pod, but yeah, he's still running around. Everyone else is ready to go. And yeah, we're just, I know you can't see it on screen that Stuart Pringle is just coming round Coppice. So you'll just, if you look in the background of your picture there, you're going to see him any second. There he is. That's why we've got such a long wait. Don't know whether this has been communicated to the drivers or not, why they've got this delay, but they're still having to wait. Stuart just coming through the chicane now, and he'll take his place. There he is, lined up on the grid, and now we can go racing. Charlie Keir in pink on the left, John Dean Smith in the Napa car on the right. There, your front row. Watch out for Lewis Manley, 3rd on the grid. Race 3 starts now, 18 laps. Good start from Charlie Keir away from pole position. Focuses 1, 2, 3 here. Then John Dean Smith, Lewis Manley looking towards the inside. Charlie Keir goes defensive. Aidan Carter's made a good start as well from 4th position. John Dean Smith sweeps around the outside once again. It's going to be Keir leading, then it's going to be John Dean Smith. I've just gone wide onto the ground. It's going to let Lewis Manley through into 2nd, Dean Smith 3rd, Carter 4th, Bennyworth 5th, Buchan and Wilson side by side 6th and 7th. There's been a few issues, I think, towards the back of the field as well. Big slide from Wilson in 6th, just ahead of Buchan. Manley leads Dean Smith. Keir's getting swallowed up now. Aidan Carter's come through. I think Bennyworth is going to come through as well into 4th position. Oh, there's contact. Bennyworth and Keir, I think they're both going to manage to rejoin. Oh, Buchan as well. Good save. Oh, and Wilson's been spun round by Gareth Ball. There was a bit of a chain reaction of events there. And Chris Wilson doing so well to earn that 3rd and 2nd, the first 2 races. He's the big loser there. Just nothing that could have done. First lap antics. No major contact, but just one tiny thing lead to another. Picking up the throttle. And Chris Wilson resuming all the way back towards the back of the field. Really unfortunate for him. The upshot is Lewis Manley, I know, is very keen to redeem himself, being very hard done by after he had that bad luck with the technical problem in race 2, has managed to get himself into the lead. Manley leads, Dean Smith second, Carter third, and Keir, Bennyworth, Boyle and Martin Buchan has fallen well back. He's in 7th place and he's nearly 4 seconds off Boyle at the back of that lead group. There is Martin Buchan. Moving for further Waterfield towards Bennyworth. Lewis Manley leading John D. Smith, but only by 0.6 of a second. Manley is not scampered off the distance as you might think. There's John Dean Smith keeping Lewis Manley honestly for the time being. Aidan Carter in 3rd in that BMW. Charlie Keir is solid 4th at the moment. He has probably been the pick of the new drivers today. Down Sarkin straight once again. I can see Wilson defending very hard there from Ben Crisp. The 9th place just off our camera there. We'll have a look at it now. There we go. Thanks, Grant. That's 2 Chris behind. Ben and Dale 10th and 11th. Both pushing the recovering Chris Wilson. Manley 109.4. What a great lap with some clear air. Getting the clear traffic and all. And there's some contact there. Ben Crisp, bit too impetuous. Oh, Dale Crisp goes straight into Wilson. That's a nasty crash there. And I think Chris Wilson has a little bit of good fortune today and done really well. But I think his luck has very much run out in this final race of the day. But he has at least got 2 podiums to show for it. Back to the leaders. I think worth having a look at the Charlie Keir group, as Bennyworth is right there with him. This is for 4th and 5th. Bennyworth got a good run. That's Roll Paper, he really struggled. Keir taking as much apex as he can, but Bennyworth can have the inside line for McLean's. In fact, he's already got the job done already. Bennyworth up to 4th, Keir back to 5th, and Gareth Boyle is right there in that orange focus there in 6th place. I think just saw Ben Crisp go off at the old hairpin, unfortunately again. But not working out well for him today. And Charlie Keir now trying to hold off Gareth Ball for 5th spot as they come through the chicane. Lewis Manley still only half a second ahead of John Dean Smith, held to lap number 4, 109.1 from Manley. And John Dean Smith, if anything, closed the gap slightly. He's had not done track limit. John Dean Smith there may well have done the fastest legitimate lap of the whole weekend. Already 2.5 seconds ahead of Aidan Carter, and the 2 drivers who were the big losers with the technical problems in race 2 are making hay in race 3, at least benefiting from their more advantageous grid position to scamper off into the distance. Good chance as well for Manley to make up some points in the championship, with Martin Buchan only 7th. Manley would actually, despite his problems, as it stands, would reassume the championship lead. Bennyworth, Keir and Boyle, I think, are still nose to tail in 4th, 5th and 6th. They are. So keeping on that on the timing screens as well. Martin Buchan just doesn't seem to have much pace here at all. He's 2.3 seconds off Gareth Boyle in 6th. He hasn't done a time below a 110. He's not got to the 109s yet. This is an uncharacteristically sluggish performance at the moment from Martin Buchan. Just seems to be a bit out of sorts so far in this race. Not what we're expecting at all. So at the moment he's on for 9 points, which would move him on to 46. Lewis Manley's 20 would move him on to 51, Grant.
I was just wondering if it was maybe he's absolutely shredded his tyres in that sideways moment through the Craners, because he was proper sideways and to the
It
point
could
on
well
the grass.
be.
If he was aggressive on the brake, he could have then taken a lot of tread off.
He's just managed to get into the 109s last time round, and his first sector then was very good, so maybe he's just got his head back into it, but he's still got 2 seconds to make up on that Bennyworth, Keir and Ball battle. Bennyworth has now decisively got past Charlie Keir into 4th place, but we stick with the leaders on lap 5. Manley, Dean Smith, both still pulling away from Aidan Carter. In the background in that BMW, very much an up and down day for Aidan Carter, of course, after taking a win and a 3rd in the Porsches this morning, a very long time ago. Do make sure you're with us, by the way, to all the next rounds of the Porsche Challenge and the Simp Race Touring Car Championship, which are on the Indy circuit at Brands Hatch, Sunday the 15th of October. We'll be very happy to have you with us once again for that, and also, of course, for the Simp Race 24 Hours at Yas Marina in November. back to 4th, 5th and 6th. You can see Buchan gradually closing the gap now. We're still 1.8 seconds behind Gareth Boyle, but he's got something to aim at. On to lap 6. And yeah, there's been some good driving, I think, by most of the new intake today. But I think Boyle and Keir have stood out, showing some really good pace at times, and I think just missing that little bit of consistency. And in a championship this competitive, I think that's what stands out. They're the drivers who really know these cars and know the tracks, and the ones that are still learning. We certainly saw with Connor Daly in the Porsches this morning how much of a difference that can make. So hopefully, I think these in particular, Charlie Keir and Gareth Boyle, are going to be two drivers to watch as the season goes on and they get more and more used to that Focus over time. Focus, probably the best car to choose as a beginner. It is a really nice, friendly, enjoyable car to drive. I wouldn't mind having a go at this championship myself if I wasn't commentating, because I've enjoyed driving that Focus so much, testing it. Gareth Boyle, meanwhile, is getting increasingly racy on the back of Charlie Keir, and you can see how much that's allowed Buchan to close up. Buchan is now only 1.1 seconds behind the pair of them. Charlie Keir going very defensive this time into Red Gate. Boyle goes to the late apex. Can he cut inside for Hollywood? Keir goes defensive. He sees it coming, but look how quickly this is bringing Martin Buchan back into play. We'll keep an eye on the splits for the leaders. There's still only half a second between Manley and Dean Smith, so we will keep a close eye on that. But this is a battle for 5th, 6th and 7th, developing here from Keir, Boyle, and our winner last time out, and the man who came into this race as the championship leader, Martin Buchan. Still not that far, as you can see, behind Ben Bennyworth, only around 1 second. Still plenty to play for. We're on lap 7 out of 18. Almost taking Charlie Keir, and if you don't get that back at Coppis very easily, the pressure really telling there, and that's just that little bit of consistency that we were mentioning earlier, and that's allowed Gareth Boyle into 5th and Martin Buchan up into 6th place. A real shame for Charlie Keir, who one of the few mistakes he's made in a very encouraging display today. So Martin Buchan up into the top 6 and still targeting Gareth Boyle and Ben Bennyworth ahead. Lewis Manley and John Dean Smith still only 5, 6, 7 tenths between them, still running firmly in the 109s. Down through the craners once again, lap 8. Another point for Buchan, that puts him provisionally on to 47, so he'd be, by our maths, 4 behind Lewis Manley as it stands, so he would theoretically need to get up into 3rd place here to hold on to the championship lead. But I still think he'd be pretty happy with his results today anyway, and in the Porsches as well. A win today in each championship, so fruitful day for the Scotsman. And Starkey's once again. Still at the front, I can tell you, John Dean Smith keeping Lewis Manley honest, still well under a second between the two of them. And suddenly, Danny Bennyworth made a mistake about the chicane there. He's lost a lot of time to go really defensive here, hold off Gareth Boyle, and Boyle's through. I think Ben Bennyworth may have made a mistake coming out the hairpin there, and Boyle's gone off. Boyle couldn't hold the position, outbraked himself. He's gone off, and it's allowed Buchan through. Bit of a couple of switches of position there, Grant.
Dan, as it stands, does that put Martin just ahead of Lewis now in the championship standings?
No, so that put Martin at 48. So I think if Lewis wins the race, I think Martin would need to finish 3rd to be leading the championship. At the moment, I think that's Lewis Manley be on 51, and I reckon Martin Buchan be on 48. Oh, Gareth Boyle, did he keep that on the island? He did just. Maybe just pushing on a little bit too hard after making that mistake at the start of the lap. But Martin Buchan up to 5th and now trying to hunt down Ben Bennyworth for P4. The closest battle on track, these and this battle for the lead. Great effort this by John Dean Smith. Really good driving. And that they come to the halfway point of the race. 9 laps gone, 9 laps to go. 109.2 that lap by John Dean Smith. He was half a second quicker than Manley and got the gap back down to 0.3 of a second. Looking at the splits, I think Lewis Manley may have made a little bit of an error coming through the chicane, or certainly in the last sector, and Buchan straight away on the back of Bennyworth, pushing hard. Bennyworth going very wide. Looks like he's struggling for grip there. Buchan's car looks like it's on rails after that early off. Maybe just taking a few laps to let the tyres cool down and getting back on the attack. And Ben Bennyworth coming under severe pressure now for this 4th place. through the old hairpin into Schwanzkirk. Bennyworth again very, very wide. We've been seeing that from him all day in both championships. Just really too eager to get on the power through the old hairpin. Has Buchan got the inside line? Yes, I think he has. He's still got the inside line for Coppice. Bennyworth again very, very wide. Just can't get the grip and get it turned in. I know Ben will be finding this really, really frustrating. And Martin Buchan, I think, is going to get the job done. Looking, you can see how much more grip that Toyota has to the Focus there. And Martin Buchan's up into 4th. Back to your leaders. They complete lap 10. Manley, that time, no time to track limits. And John Dean Smith, not a great lap, 1:10.1. I think Manley's would have been about a 1:10 or 1:09.7. But it was removed for a small track limits violation. But still not much to separate these two Focuses with 8 laps to go. Bennyworth now coming under pressure from Gareth Boyle. This is the closest battle on track at the moment. It's for 5th place. Really aggressive apexes from Boyle, really, really pushing on. Maybe sensing that Bennyworth doesn't have as much grip and he's got a chance to make an attack. 4 Focuses in the top 6 at the moment. Up the hill once again towards Coppice. Back onto Starkey straight. Top 5 being a great result for Gareth Boyle, especially he's already being off. Bennyworth going defensive there. If that's not a sign that Ben Bennyworth really struggling with the grip, I don't know what is. Boyle's going to go way too wide out, breaking himself there. And he's going to have to do all that hard work again. So 7 laps to go. Yellow flag sector 2. I think that's one of the drivers towards the back of the field. I don't think it's been troubling the leaders. We'll keep an eye on that one. And Gareth Boyle with all that work to do again, because after that outbreaking himself into the last chicane, he's now fallen more than a second behind Ben Bennyworth once again. So hard work to do for Gareth Boyle in P6 to try and get that place in the top 5. Let's have another look at your leaders then. Still, as it has been pretty much for the whole race here, John Dean Smith's just 2/3 of a second behind Lewis Manley, looking for his 2nd win of the day. And then Racing Focus, leads Napa Racing Focus, down to Goddard's once again. Right, then left, we move into the final 1/3 of the race. 6 laps to go. And hopefully this is just bubbling up nicely to a finale. We're going towards the back of the field now because we're on board with Josh Vincent, who may be at the rear. He's only just behind Dale Crisp. Oh, he's just spun it there. I say it might, and actually with him rejoining, because I think the leaders are going to come up behind him to lap him. There was only about 7 or 8 seconds ahead of them on the road. Let's have another look at the Bennyworth and Gareth Boyle battle in 5th and 6th positions. And Boyle has done well to close that gap again, because after that mistake early, he was more than a second behind. He's got the gap back down to 0.3. We'll let you know if anything happens with our leaders. Josh Vincent, I can tell you, has rejoined, and he has rejoined behind the leader. So if Manley and Dean Smith were able to get past, so I can see his Vincent's gold liveried car in the background. Although I do think that the leaders will be coming out to lap at least Dale Crisp before the end of the race, possibly. Bennyworth again defensive. Let's see if Boyle outbreaks himself again, or does he get it right this time? Trying to go around the outside of him. Does he get it turned? Can he get it stopped? Oh, he's gone over the green there. I think he probably have to give that position back, and he has done. Good job by Gareth Boyle. Good effort to try and do it. It's not easy to do that round the outside of the hair, but it was a very, very good effort indeed, and the right thing to do to give the place back. So good sporting driving. I know Paddy, our steward today, has been really clear with the drivers. If you do gain an advantage or you make up a place through contact, if you make an effort to give the place back straight away, they won't be penalised. And good to see Gareth Boyle taking that advice to heart. Let's have another look at the leaders now, because John Dean Smith is closing right back up towards the back of Lewis Manley once again. Here they are coming through McLean's, 4.5 laps to go. And up towards Coppice. John Dean Smith, I know, would love to win in this Focus, a car that he supplies tyres for in real life, and to also make it 3 different winners on the day. We're on board with John Dean Smith in the number 94 car now. Oh, he's braked very, very late there, but he's made up a bit of time, even with the concertina effect. Through Goddard, up to the line, 4 laps to go. John has never been more than a second behind Lewis at any point in this race. But as we know, Lewis Manley rarely makes mistakes and deals with the pressure very, very well. As we know, what happened to him in race 2 was beyond his control. John doing everything he can to try and pressure Manley, and it won't take much of an error to give him an opportunity with 3.5 laps remaining in this race. Also a quick word, maybe just keep an eye as well on Martin Buchan's times, because he's only 1.5 seconds behind Aidan Carter now, so he could still potentially have a race on our hands for third, and I think Buchan is catching him as well. So yeah, just looking at the split, that says 2 seconds there. I think Buchan might have just lost a bit of time in that middle sector there. In fact, Aidan Carter's done the fastest middle sector of the race, so I think he's given a bit of the hurry up, seeing the Toyota looming in his mirrors. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on Bennyworth and Boyle as well. They're still nose to tail in 5th and 6th. So with 3 laps to go here at Donington Park in the final race of the day, everything to be decided. And you might have seen in the distance there on this onboard, Manley taking a little bit of a mistake there. Aidan Carter, 108, fastest lap of the day, 108.9, only man in the 108. Aidan Carter definitely getting the hurry up to try and keep that 3rd place. I was about to say, you might have seen the distance, you might see in the foreground here, that these two are coming up to lap Dale Crisp. He's only a few seconds ahead on the row. It might come into play right at the end of the race. We've only got 2.5 laps to go now. I know Lewis Manley already does feel very hard done by after what happened in race 2, even though it obviously did happen to John Dean Smith as well. It certainly feel extremely hard done by if he was to trip over a back marker and lose another win. I think he might feel that he should have had a hat-trick today, but unfortunately things have just conspired against him a little. On to Starkeys again. I think this is as close as John has been, but it would be a full send from there to try and get out the inside. Does he fancy his chances? Not this time. Focus on getting a good run through the chicane. Hope to force an error. Nice and clean lines from both of them. And John's really close now. 2 laps to go. Manley now feels the chart has to go defensive for the first time. John to the outside will try the wide line in the late apex once again. He's got a good run. I think Manley be wise to it as John does to get on the inside. Not quite. He was less than a car length short. Manley swipes across him. Robust defence, but Manley now feeling the pressure as they come through the craners on the penultimate lap. Gareth Boyle, like I say, was past Ben Bennyworth for 5th, but we will stay with this battle for the lead through to the end with a lap and a half to go. Manley barely a car length in front as they come through Schwantz Curve. John Dean Smith sensing a chance to get a first win in the Focus. Actually, lights both go on both cars. See, John actually had to dab the brakes there. He was about to run up the back of Manley. He had such a good run coming up the hill through the Schwantz Curves. There's that back marker. Is he going to have a part to play in the result of this final race of the day? Where will John have a go? Just the chicane. Well done to Dale Crisp. He has seen what's coming. He's moved out of the way and left it to be a straight fight. Yellow flag is sector thing. I think that was just because of the slow-moving car. I don't think anything else untoward has happened. It might be Josh Vincent, actually. But as they two come through, it's Manley. It's John Dean Smith. There's barely a cigarette paper between them as they start the final lap of the last race of the day. Again, Manley goes defensive. John Dean Smith will try and do the same thing here. Nice and wide, take as late an apex as he can and try and get alongside Manley before Manley can shut the door. Doesn't do it this time. Manley goes defensive anyway as he compromises line a little bit. Well, it'll be difficult to take a move up the inside of the old hairpin. Barely anything between them through the craners for the final time. Here they come. John will try and go wide again. Will he get the better run through the old hairpin up the Schwantz Curve? Just over half a lap to go. Left again, and then it'll be right into McLean's. Offensive again from Manley. John will try and get the run. It's just Coppice and the hairpin to go. John pushing very, very hard. Just running onto the green a little bit. Into Coppice again. Manley defensive. So it's going to come down to the chicane, or if someone makes a mistake trying to get on the power out of it. John's got a very, very good run here. I wonder maybe he's got the hybrid. Manley's going to have to go very, very defensive. It's going to come down to the final chicane and coming out of it. Manley's got the line. He feels like he doesn't have to block the inside. Will John go for a full send? I think he has. Oh, he's taking him off. He's taking him off. I think he's going to recover though. Manley's going to come back on. Manley will take the win very sportingly. I don't think John's going going to try and push the issue there. He had to go for it. Lewis Manley takes the win. Second to John Dean Smith. Third for Aidan Carter. Fourth for Martin Buck, and didn't quite get there in the end. And Gareth Boyle wins that battle against Ben Beddyworth. Boyle gets P5, is he? Oh, he's just come up to the line now. I don't know if he knew where the finish line was. He's got it by less than a tenth of a second. I think Gareth Boyle thought the finish line was a bit earlier than it was. Charlie Keir from pole position ends up in 7th place, just ahead of Stuart Pringle, and then barring any mishaps, it will be Chris Wilson. Unfortunately, a couple of offs early on, ends up in 9th place. Then Ben Crisp, Dale Crisp, and Josh Vincent. A great duel throughout the race between Lewis Manley and John Dean Smith. And Lewis Manley, I know, was very aggrieved at what happened to him in race 2, but the good news for him is, by our calculations, he will leave Donington Park with the championship lead, 1 point ahead of Martin Buck, and Manley with 51 and Buchan with 50. With the next round coming up on the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit on October the 15th. I will check with Grant, see are we going to be able to do some post-race 3 interviews?
Yeah, we'll do some
I think we didn't get a chance to speak to anyone with race 2 with everything that happened. There's confirmation of your result. Lewis Manley winning by, well, probably the biggest gap of the whole, 1.4 seconds because of John Dean Smith and the contact. That was the biggest gap of the whole race. Then Aidan Carter in 3rd and Martin Buchan in 4th. We're going to have a very short break and we'll speak to our top 3 from race 3. Hey, welcome back to the final time today for Donington Park and the final interviews after this Simply Race Touring Car Championship season opener. We've had some great race day across the Porsches and the touring cars. Thank you very much for joining us all. We hope to see you again for Brands Hatch next month. I'm joined by our 3rd place finisher, Aidan Carter. You had a very up and down day in the touring cars, but good to get a podium at the end of it.
Yeah, really good to get a podium at the end. Yeah, like you say, it's a bit of an up and down day for the touring cars. Yeah, track conditions, track itself doesn't really suit the car that I've chosen, the BMW, so yeah, it's just trying to get as many points as I could on the board. A few mistakes for myself, first 2 races, but 3rd race finally a clean race on the board, so yeah, happy to get a podium.
Obviously great results in the Porsches today, and obviously a good solid performance with a difficult car with the BMWs as well. How hard is it sort of physically and mentally to keep the concentration up? Because it's a long day doing these 5 races all in a single day.
Yeah, it definitely is a long day. I think the hardest part is probably the switchover from the Porsches to the touring cars, because even though the BMW is a rear-wheel drive, it still drives very differently to what the Porsche does. So yeah, that's probably the most taxing part of the day. Other than that, as long as the races are easy and I'm not in any crazy battles, which I was for most of the day, then it's relatively stress-free as long as you can keep it clean. So it's not too bad, actually. Not too bad today.
Brilliant. Well, great job, Aidan. Thank you very much for your company, and we'll see you again at Brands next month, I'm sure. So we'll wait and bring in our runner-up, a very narrow runner-up, it has to be said, John Dean Smith. Ever committed to fashion, even with the headset on, he still won't take his hat off. No, of course not.
Yeah.
Well, John, I'm sure you'll be absolutely delighted to have kept Lewis Manley on it for a full race distance, solid run, no mistakes, and last lap, you had to go for it.
Yeah, I did. I mean, there's going to be a couple of things reviewed shortly, the steward's already said. We'll call Lewis's defence robust, is the best word I can use for it. It was quite similar in race 2 when I was stuck behind him there as well. I clearly had the pace to keep up with him, and I had no choice but to at least attempt something into the last corner. But no, overall, really good race. I feel like I had the pace today. I just had a couple of incidents, obviously a couple of technicals in race 2. Nothing could be done about that, but was quite happy with the recovery drive back to 6th. Race 1, bit of an issue with the race start, my own fault. shifted up too early, bogged down, which meant everyone just came up the inside of me. So it was a bit of a recovery from there.
Yeah.
But no, really enjoyable race. Been some really good racing today with all of the guys in the cars in front of me and behind. And yeah, just overall pretty good.
Are you finding it easier to be consistent in the focus and cut out the hours? I know you've had a couple of offs today. I mean, the Porsche we know are difficult to drive, but I mean, so I've driven it myself, and I think the Focus is a very reliable, predictable car to drive, and it looks more enjoyable, certainly compared to the BMW you drove at the end of last season.
Yeah, I feel really comfortable in the Focus this year. It just handles exactly how I want it to. It's really predictable. I know exactly what it's going to do, when it's going to do it. Not to say that I don't make a couple of mistakes here and there in it. It's obviously something that happens from time to time. But when you do make a mistake, you can look at recovering quite easily, unless you've really messed up effectively. But yeah, really happy with the car. It feels excellent. Felt really good around here. Once I found my line and got settled in, that was it. I was really happy in the car and felt like I really challenged for the win in race 3.
Brilliant. Well done, John. I'm sure you'll be right up there in the mix of brands. I know it's one of your favourite tracks, so we'll see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, John, and hopefully we will get a chance to have a word. I know Lewis is just having a chat with the stewards at the moment, so we'll just hold off for a minute or two while a couple of incidents are being looked at, and hopefully we'll get back to you very shortly. Do you want to join me for a minute, Grant? May as well. We'll just Bob in the meantime.
I mean, we're waiting for confirmation. For
Yeah,
the results, so we can't do the podium or anything.
Yeah, I mean,
so we might as well have a little chat.
In the meantime, it's good to be back, and we have had some really good racing today. We've certainly had meetings in the past. There's been a lot more for the stewards to do in terms of driving standards, at least. But no, there's been some good racing today. It's good we've got some healthy grids, and yeah, I'm hoping that most people are going to go home with a smile on their face.
I think the racing standards today were really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had our issues in race 2, but that's water under the bridge now. It's happened. I don't think we'll be seeing anything like that on any of the other circuits that we're attending this season. It does seem to just be a this track problem. I don't think we saw it in that race either, after lowering the graphics a bit.
I didn't notice anything myself.
But yeah, just the racecraft in general was really good. I don't really see, I know shouldn't get too biased on here, but I don't really see anything wrong that Lewis did in that final.
No,
move.
there was one obviously big chop coming out of Redgate, but he did have the position.
But I feel like he was ahead at that point.
I did.
I feel like he was, and I never saw him move more than once. So, because that's obviously when it gets a little bit dodgy.
Yeah.
But like,
always right for the stewards to have a look at these things.
Of course.
I can't. There was nothing untoward from our point of view.
I'll be surprised. I'll be very surprised if they do anything with that. In all honesty,
no, I agree.
I feel like it would be quite a harsh blow. But it's up to the stewards, not up to us. That's why we commentate and they steward, to be fair. But either way, a really enjoyable day of racing as a whole. The Porsches were absolutely fantastic as well. I just think in terms of action, we've had it all. We've seen it all.
We have. I was really looking forward to those Porsches around Thruxton coming up in December. That's going to be a real... I know Thruxton was wet last year for the Alpines. I drove in that race myself. I remember how much of a nightmare that was. So just a reminder, Sunday the 15th of October is the date to put in your diary for Brands Hatch Indy for rounds 3 and 4 for the Porsches, rounds 4, 5, 6 the touring cars. In the meantime, just while we wait, just to remind you, the Simply Race Endurance Series, the final round, the 24 hours GT1 cars around Yas Marina, that is coming up on the 11th and 12th of November, I think, and I'm expecting a nod here from Grant. There are still entries available.
Yeah, and it's the 10th, 11th and 12th.
Yeah, because you're doing qualifying on the Friday night.
Qualifying on Friday night, and then race will start 2 p.m. on Saturday. So that is a full range of GT1 cars from the 2010 season. So you've got the Aston Martin DBR9, the Ford GT,
cracking cars,
Lamborghini Murcielago, Maserati MC12, Nissan GTR. Some very cool cars on that grid. They are all really cool in their own way.
And it's anywhere between what's the minimum maximum driver numbers for a team?
We don't have a minimum, which is probably a bit silly, but we don't have a minimum amount of drivers.
Don't tell Martin, because he's done 8 hours on it. I don't want him or Nathan Burton getting ideas.
Recommended driver, team size, I always recommend at least 4 drivers, because I think that gives you a good window between each one. Obviously, it's up to teams if they want to do it as a group of 3. It's definitely doable. I mean, that's how they do Le Mans these days.
Yeah.
In terms of maximum size, 8 drivers is the most you can have on a team.
Which would still give you 3 hours of track time each and give you lots more flexibility in terms of who does the night shift and so on.
Correct.
So, yeah, we do tend to get a lot of different combinations. So, yeah, get in touch with the Simply Race team here at Milton Keynes, or visit simplyrace.co.uk for more information on that, and then we'll be back into more Touring car action, we've got Thruxton coming up in December, then it's Alton Park in January, Croft in February, Knock Hill March, and then the season finale on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit on April the 14th. So I'm just looking to see now whether we're going to get a chance to speak to Lewis Manley. He's vaguely heading in our direction.
So I think I can hear race control explaining the decision that's just been made. I think Lewis has still won though, from what I've just heard. So
Okay.
I need to get clarification.
Okay, well, Grant, if you go away and do a bit, if you go and do a bit of digging.
At the moment, I don't think it's the right time to interrupt those two, particularly right now. So
No,
we'll
not at all.
just we'll keep on discussing things through the day.
And, well, I think we have some news from
Okay.
from Annabelle, race director, is going to clear things up. So hopefully we'll be able to give you a clarification on the result from Grant very shortly. Just want to thank everyone on the feed again. I mean, obviously, unlike Srez, obviously we'd have shorter races, a lot more action, so I'm sorry we aren't able to cover your comments, but we really do appreciate your company on a Sunday afternoon and watching some great racing, and thank you very much as well. We hope to see you all down here to race or to test very soon. So I know the conversation about the final result are still ongoing. That is the result for the time being. As it stands, that would put Lewis Manley as the championship leader on 51 points. Martin Buchan would be second by my maths on 50. Just 1 point between them then. And obviously Brands Hatch Indy, short track, lots of laps, always lots of action. Always one of the best circuits on the calendar for the touring cars. I think there'll be a real challenge for the Porsches as well, with that coming up 4 weeks from today. So please stay with us just for a couple of minutes, and very shortly we'll be back with you and be able to confirm any changes that have been made to the results of race 3. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for still with us and joining us. Just to cross the I's and dot the T's of the Ralph Race 3. The stewards had a very good look at the defence that Lewis Manley put in to hold off John Dean Smith on the run down to the final chicane on the last lap. Now, I know Grant and I were kind of in agreement at the time. We didn't see anything under walls. The stewards had a very detailed look at it in terms of whether or not Martin had moved on 2 separate occasions in terms of pulling back in. The decision in the end was to take no further action. And so Lewis Manley's win does stand with John Dean Smith in second and Aidan Carter third. I can tell you they've crunched the numbers on the championship. Lewis Manley's just going to join us now. He has 51 points. Martin Buchan has 50. And then it's Chris Wilson has 40. Aidan Carter 39. Ben Bennyworth 13. And John Dean Smith 37. Lewis, thank you very much for joining with us. I know you've had a very up and down afternoon, but the end product is, on a positive note, 2 wins and the championship lead.
After what's been a really difficult day for me, really a bad piece of luck in the second race with that terrible glitch that I had. So what should have been 3 out of 3 wins is obviously been 2 wins and a 5th. So given on what I've had, like terrible luck, and I still managed to win overall today, which is at least a bit of satisfaction. So just really hope next time at Brands Hatch in 4 weeks' time I can hopefully keep the momentum going.
Yeah, a lot of pressure from John all the way through all the way through to the last lap at the end. So you must have been looking in your mirrors just as much as you were looking ahead.
Exactly, because I thought when I was just pulling away a little bit down the S's, I thought I'd just got enough to win this, and obviously because you are allowed to move a little bit as long as it's not too aggressively, and because he was a little bit far back to go for it. I mean, fair play he went for on the last lap, but as he was a little bit too far back than previous ones, I just think he wouldn't have got the move done anyway. But of course it was a long inquiry, and obviously fortunately they said that I can keep the win, so just obviously next time hopefully, because obviously like if he was closer to me, then obviously I wouldn't have gone back to the racing line. So obviously hopefully next time if that happens again, I'll just try and stay defensive and try and keep the people behind me.
So Brands next, obviously you go there with the championship lead after a good start to the season. Is that a track, the Indy circuit, that you feel particularly strong on?
It wasn't the best last year for me, because when I had I think it was 2 seconds, and the last one I had a pretty disappointing 8th. So just hopefully with this Indy circuit, depends how the car feels around the circuit. Because again in that last race, when I should have had 5 laps of hybrid, I only had 1 lap. So therefore I was continuously saying I've only got 1 lap of hybrid and I should have had 5, and now so they couldn't do nothing about it. But at least I held on. So if I obviously had the hybrid of 5 laps, now I obviously would have won a lot more easier than what I did.
Lewis, thank you very, very much for joining us. I do appreciate your time, because I know it's been a very difficult afternoon for you in many different ways, but you are the championship leader, so we will see you at Brands Hatch in a month's time. Cheers, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So thank you to Lewis Manley, and that finally, after been a very long day, is that. It was some great Porsche racing. I know Grant's just going to come join us for the final start. Some great Porsche racing, great touring car racing. And only 1 point between the top 2 in the championship, I believe. So everything's set up for what's always good racing at Brands Hatch next time out.
Yeah, Brands Hatch is always a favourite for the fans, and for us especially. There's always some amazing racing. Always tricky for those race starts going into Paddock Hill Bend when you got people trying to go 3 wide in there. It's always exciting, always a little bit controversial, but we look forward to it.
Absolutely. Sunday, October the 15th, the week after the Real World Touring Car Championship finishes at the same venue, albeit on the Grand Prix circuit. We will see you all then. Thank you all very much for your company today. Grant Lyman and Dan McCalla signing off from Simply Race. We'll see you at Brands in October.